How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. The head of the FDA, Dr. Marty McRae.
Good.
Makary.
Great to be here. I'm in the belly of the beast. I must say, when I first heard of your podcast and my team said I'm coming on, I said, finally, a podcast about pancreatico-biliary diseases.
That's right. And that's all we're going to talk about today. I'm glad you brought that up. As an expert in that previous, my background, I'm going to be able to ask you some technical questions in that. No, but it's great to have you here. And one of the things I love that we're doing is the fact that you're going on the road, talking to anybody and everybody. And to me, that gives trust in me that you're willing to talk and share what's going on and also educate us. Because I think sometimes, whether we can go to previous or even, not even previous, historically, it's been, you don't go and talk to people because what if you get caught off guard and it's a little too risky? You shouldn't talk. We're just the expert. Let's just tell people what to do and they got to do it. So I respect you for coming out. Having said that, I just want to kind of open it up with what stories, what items I want to talk about so the audience is aware, and then we'll go from there. One, I want to talk about what's going to happen with Fauci. I think a lot of people, when you hear the story of 20 million people that died during COVID, we want to know if there's going to be any level of accountability. Two, as a father of four, I got two girls. I'm curious, when you study the history, my wife and I were talking about this last week, on girls who were having periods at 17, 18 in the 1900s, in the 1800s, and in the 1900s was 16, 17, then in the 50s it went to 14, 15, then it goes to 13, and now today it's at 11 years old. What's causing that? Curious about that. Of course, we'll talk about autism as well. And then the food pyramid, how we went from food pyramid to my plate, and what is the next thing we're going to be, introducing, because for longest time we're like, eat your grains, 6 to 11, and they're good, but to eat that much of it and the amount of lobbying that takes place with that, and a myocarditis and a few other topics that we'll get into, but I'm excited to have you here. So having said that, to the average person, tell us the history of FDA. How did it get started? Why did it get started?
Yeah, so it's a fascinating history. It was a little over 100 years ago. There were some, essentially some toxic chemicals that appeared, and people were getting very sick and even dying. So a small group of people led an investigation to figure out where these chemicals were originating from. They used to put mercury in some foods. There used to be heavy metals, and Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. That's why it was called Coke initially. So the FDA began by sort of doing investigations, and people thought, hey, there's value in this. Now it regulates 20% of the U.S. economy. Should probably be 15% or something far less. And we have offices in 50 countries, and it oversees everything from mangoes coming across the border to cosmetics to MRI machines and microwave ovens to tobacco and vape products to wearables and devices and, of course, drugs.
Got it. And for yourself, obviously I watched you when you were coming up, and when they were saying he could be the head of the FDA, he could be the head of the FDA, and everybody was following kind of some of the things you were talking about. We've listened to you for many years, when especially during COVID, when you would come out and talk about certain things. But for you having the job now, one, how was the phone call made? Who called you and offered you the job? And what's the experience been for you so far? Do you actually feel like you can make direct impact?
Yeah, it's an awesome job. You can actually do stuff. You can actually get stuff done with a very high level of impact in society. I've been there about 8 months. We've gotten a tremendous amount of stuff done. Eliminating animal testing that's unnecessary, the removal of the petroleum-based food dyes. They've been talking about that for 35 years. They've been talking about getting rid of one dye for 35 years. Within weeks, we announced the removal of all 9 artificial dyes from the U.S. food supply. We're making our decisions. If we reject a product, we're making those letters public so the public can see why. We've got AI in the agency. We're cutting red tape. We're focusing on cures and meaningful treatments. And that's just the first 8 months. So I'm very grateful to President Trump when he called me and said, hey, is this something you'll consider? He's an amazing guy. He's a phenom, really. He has more energy than anybody and instincts better than some of the academic elites in America. So it's just a huge honor to work with him and Secretary Kennedy and Mehmet Oz and Jay Bhattacharya and the gang.
It's great to see this team there, okay? It's very good to see the team there, and it's, because these are the guys that were sometimes the most vocal during COVID. So the people are like, okay, great, you're in. Are you actually going to be able to do the things that we want? So one question for you. You know, when you get a job like this, I'm assuming if we were boys, if we're friends, and say we went to school together and you went to the, medical route and I would go into the finance route. And we're having dinner, we're at a game, we're watching football. You're a football guy, I'm a football guy. We're watching, we're like, hey, Joe Burrow just said he's making a comeback and all this stuff. It's great, he's coming back. And I tell you, I said, so listen, between you and I, we've known each other for 40 years, okay, from 7th grade. These are 3 things I want to see you do, bro. Like friends are talking to friends, right? Yeah. I want to see this, that. Now, you probably only have 3 people that'll talk to you like that, 5 people that'll talk to you like that. But the people that are closest to you, now that they know that you're in, what are folks telling you, man, I hope you get to the bottom of this and this and this? What are the 3 things your friends, specifically friends, maybe not even from the medical space, but friends telling you they'd like to see you pursue?
Man, that's a good question. Now I see why your podcast is one of the top rated in America. Look, we're unfiltered, all of us, the team. We are unfiltered. We are raw. We are honest. And what you see is what you get. We're not going to put something in political speak and massage and give you some boring speech. They give me speeches. The team gives you speeches when you're in these jobs and you go into this association and you're supposed to read this speech. I can't do it. I can't read these speeches. They're so darn boring. I'd fall asleep. I fall asleep reading them. So we're going to give it to you like it is, and we're not going to be shy. My friends tell me they want to fix the food supply, and they want to see cures for certain diseases. And I think we can deliver cures for certain diseases. I think in this administration, you're going to see a meaningful, powerful treatment through cutting the red tape and being proactive for neurodegenerative diseases, for type 1 diabetes, for certain types of cancer. We just gave a priority review voucher to a company that makes a drug that takes certain rectal cancers of certain gene subtypes. It's a small subset of 5 to 10% of rectal cancers. The drug literally melts the tumor away to zero. No chemo, no surgery, no radiation. That's the kind of stuff patients deserve, and that's the sort of stuff that's new in our healthcare system where we're throwing good money after bad into this broken system. We've got to innovate. We've got to promote innovation. So I would say the food is the biggest thing, and then cures for certain conditions, and we're going to deliver on both. We're rewriting the food pyramid right now.
You're rewriting the food pyramid?
Yeah.
Right now.
It was written by the companies based on what they wanted to buy.
Yeah. And so, when should we be expecting the new food pyramid?
I think in the next couple months.
Okay.
Because and it's going to be short. It might be 5 pages, right? You put out this classic government disconnect from the American people. You put out a 200-page document, no one's going to read it. You put out something that's 4 or 5 pages. Now every single school board member in America, every parent can understand that we don't need to wage a war on natural saturated fat. Where did that come from? That was medical dogma. Medical establishment got that wrong for 50 years. Tried to blame everything on saturated fat. Moved all these kids in school to low-fat things where they pounded them with refined carbohydrates. So we're going to be honest with people. We're going to talk about protein. We're going to talk about fiber and the types of grains you get, not just calories in equals calories out, and it doesn't matter how processed the food is. So we're going to be honest with people, and I think you're going to see a meaningful change.
Can you give us any hints, anything that's majorly different? Because the original food pyramid we saw was from 92 to 05, and then they changed it to, I believe, My Plate. Is it called My Plate?
My Plate, and then they had the Food Compass, which and came out of an NIH study that said Lucky Charms was healthier than a steak.
Lucky Charms was healthier than a steak. So when you hear stuff like this, I mean, no wonder people don't trust it's going to be very hard. I mean, I'm actually curious to know as we go through this, how you're going to be working on regaining the trust, because after COVID, people haven't trusted this probably for the last 5 years. And that's going to be a lot of work for you guys.
Well, I think that's one of our big goals, to rebuild public trust. And we're doing it by trying to show some humility in our approach, being extremely honest, and by talking to the public. We're not living in a black box in an ivory tower. I'm here, and I've been talking to people that want to have a serious conversation about what's wrong with our healthcare system. And we don't talk about, when we talk about healthcare and everyone's talking about how to finance our broken healthcare system, what's been missing are the two root causes. The price of goods and services is way too high, and it could be much lower. You're seeing President Trump now announce lower drug prices at the price of pennies on the dollar of what these drugs used to be. And the other issue is the health of the population. No one talks about the fact that 40% of our nation's kids have a chronic disease. Many of them take regular medications. What's going on here? We're just medicating our nation's kids at scale, and nobody is saying stop and look up and look around and see what we're doing. We take these kids and we rattle them in the middle of the night in their circadian rhythm. We put them on a school bus, not because it's good for their circadian rhythm, but because it's convenient for adults going to work. And then we pound them with ultra-processed foods and high glycemic loads, and we tell them to sit still at a desk. And then we pound them again with an ultra-processed lunch. And then we tell them to sit still again, and they can't do it. They got to sort of sugar coma. And then what do? We tell them you're a bad kid, and we drug our nation's kids at scale. They have less natural light exposure than prisoners. What is going on? So we've got to talk about these root causes. So we're talking about all of this stuff, and we're doing research, and we're talking about the medicalization of ordinary life.
So your friends, their top three things. One was food supply. Two was cure for diseases, which you just talked about, cancer, other things that we're talking about.
Yep.
Where was investigating Fauci on the list?
A lot of people are angry at Fauci. A lot of people have a right to be angry.
You were angry. You were very angry with him. You said a few things about him as well, right? A few years ago. You were very bold about it on what he was. You were probably one of the most vocal ones towards him.
When we were all trying to figure out COVID at the very beginning, I was editor-in-chief of one of the largest trade publications that doctors read, called MedPage Today. And I figured we were hearing stories about Wuhan, China. I got to figure out the real story. I don't want to hear political pundits opine and talk about American resilience. Remember that whole, we'll be fine and we'll be strong. What the heck are you talking about? We have to understand the transmissibility, the viral load, the treatments. And so I went deep dive on this. I called doctors in Wuhan during that whole outbreak. And I basically started to realize that Fauci was misleading the public. There's only 3 coronaviruses that cause severe illness in humans: SARS, MERS, and COVID-19. Well, the other 2 are airborne. Why did he think this suddenly took a turn and was just going to be different, and telling teachers in the summer of 2020 to wear gloves and goggles and pour a gallon of alcohol solution on your mail? And I mean, what the heck was going on? So I realized when he was being introduced on the media as our nation's top, remember this, our nation's top infectious diseases doctor, I knew the guy had not done an infectious diseases fellowship training. And there was this sort of bandwagon thinking. We see it a lot in medicine. We see it with, opioids are not addictive. How dare you disagree? We got that wrong for 15 years. It's an old story in medicine. And so now I realize, as I was trying to figure things out and be independent from just reciting the catechism that Fauci put out, what he was doing with his time is leading a massive cover-up of the possibility that this came from the Wuhan lab, which any smart person will tell you it's obvious, right? The epicenter of the world was 5 miles from the lab. The lab had submitted, we just learned this about 2 years ago, and there's a great film called Thank You, Dr. Fauci, and it goes through all this. And that lab had submitted a grant proposal to the United States government 2 years before COVID, in 2018, saying the proposal said, we at the Wuhan lab would like to take a bat coronavirus and genetically modify it by inserting the furin cleavage sites to enable it to infect humans. Now, what? It was the cookbook for COVID-19. And then people are acting like, oh, we don't know where it came from. They were plotting to do it. They had the resources to do it. They filed for a patent for a COVID-19 vaccine in like February of 2020. How do you have a patent on a vaccine that early? People have a right to be angry. I'm angry. 20 million people may have died globally, $25 trillion. And people in the United States got so polarized, this toxic polarization, they got spun up by affirming media where they're angry at everybody. They're angry at a college kid who's healthy, who has no risk of dying of COVID because he's not getting his second COVID booster shot. They're angry at somebody not wearing a mask outside, a cloth mask. And they're angry at everybody, but they're not angry at the scientists that brewed this up at the lab. They were mad scientists.
So what should happen, though? I mean, if you think about, here's a guy who said, masks, yeah, you got to wear masks, and the cameras were off, he's taking the masks off. Here's a guy that said, I probably will never shake another person's hand ever again. It's probably a good idea to never shake someone's hand ever again. What are you talking about? I mean, you came in right now, we shook hands. That's one way of greeting each other, right? He says, you should trust me. I think I'm somebody you should trust. Trust science. He kept saying this over and over and over again, and then making people feel guilty. So now people sit there and listen to him. 6-foot rule. I never said that. You kind of did. And hey, my grandma's dying. No, you can't go see her. Why? Because you may give her COVID or you may give you COVID. I never saw my grandma on her deathbed. There's a lot of people that went through this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What can you do? What can, HHS do to make those people whole and say, you know what? I'm good. We got to the bottom of it. Now I can live my life and accountability's been held. What do you think can happen for those people to be comfortable moving forward?
I don't know, but people want closure. They want a proper investigation. They want justice to be served. There was clearly a massive cover-up. I mean, 3 a.m. emails going on when Fauci was told that, hey, this, the Wuhan lab is being implicated, and we funded the Wuhan lab. They
3 a.m. email that he's
to the head of the committee that's supposed to approve gain-of-function research, and Fauci and Collins had created a system. So, the origin is that in Wisconsin, in conjunction with another lab, they did an experiment where they juiced up a flu virus to make it very deadly. And they showed that it infected these ferrets, which are known respiratory models used for research. And they published this article. And basically the researchers said, hey, we juiced up, we Frankensteined a very deadly virus, and we show that it's contagious. And the world scientific community read this article and said, what the hell did you just do? No one should ever do this. Just because you can do something in science doesn't mean you should. This is a bunch of mad scientists. And they petitioned President Obama at the time to ban gain-of-function research. And he, to his credit, put a moratorium on it. Well, Fauci and Collins were known to oppose this moratorium, and they did their bureaucratic ways to make sure that they could continue to do this, including writing an op-ed titled something like Dangerous Flu Research, Gain-of-Function Research, a Risk Worth Taking. And they changed the definition, and they worked around the committee that was supposed to approve grants for gain-of-function research, and they continued to fund gain-of-function research. Now, President Trump, one of his first things when we all took our office was to ban gain-of-function research, any dangerous gain-of-function research. Fauci will still parse his words. He's kind of a master at it. Like when he said, I had never called for schools to be closed. Well, when DeSantis reopened the schools, he said, this is extremely dangerous, right? And people could die. And so, I mean, he's the master of sort of circumlocution, I don't know what's going to happen, but people have a right to be angry.
So currently right now, he had his, what do you call it? He got his pardon, right? He got the stamp pardon. Hunter Biden got the signature pardon from Daddy, but he got the auto pen pardon, right? Let's just say the investigation comes out. And It's been removed. He's not pardoned. He was at Dick Cheney's funeral the other day, sitting right next to Rachel Maddow, a funeral he would have never been to if Trump was never the president, because these guys hated Dick Cheney. So for them to go, the only reason they went to Dick Cheney's funeral is because their daughter hates Trump. So it's kind of like they have a mutual enemy, right? So he's at the funeral. But let's just say the Autopin comes back. He's been very low-key, very quiet. He's no longer the sexiest man on earth, according to Guardian. He's been kind of like the most hidden man on earth right now. You can't find him. But say if it's removed, and then you can investigate him. Would you support Fauci being investigated to find out his involvement in COVID with 20 million people dying around the world?
Absolutely.
You would support it?
Yeah. Now, just so you know, he gave a Grand Rounds distinguished lecture at Johns Hopkins, where I was before I came to the FDA, I think a couple weeks before I took office. And he got a standing ovation. And they're praising him and fawning over him.
What year was this?
This was 9 months ago.
Oh, wow.
This is just before I took office at the FDA.
In 25.
Yeah, and he's given distinguished lectures all over the place, and the audiences are clapping like seals. And there's this groupthink in medicine, and it's again affirming news out there, and Trump derangement syndrome, and he made a bunch of mistakes. Okay, people are human, but then when Biden took office, he elevated him to be the chief medical advisor. And elevating a guy with that many errors, when you get that many things wrong in a short period of time, and then to me, that was a major turn of events.
Yeah. So I guess it's going to be a two-step process. One, they have to get to the bottom of the auto pen. If they don't, nothing can happen. If they do, then it can be opened up. And, some tells me RFK Jr., he would probably want to get to the bottom of it. I know Rand Paul, I know a lot of other people want to get to the bottom of it to see what would happen there. Because, again, you sit here, you're like, well, what's the big deal? Let's just move on.
Yeah.
That is the most annoying thing for people to hear. Let's just move on. We investigated Watergate and nobody got killed. It was like the end of the world. Watergate. We investigated 9/11 was only 20 months. This kind of gives me the vibes of 9/11. Let's just kind of move quickly on and not look back. We investigated a lot of these things for a long time. World War I killed 15 to 17 million people. This thing killed 20 million people. And there is not a trilateral, investigation to see who was involved, who knew, who didn't know.
Yeah.
I think the level of frustration with the American people specifically is that the government's just going to be like, trust me, the American people are going to forget, we're going to move on. I don't know if this is going to be that, because the next time another pandemic comes up, they're like, I still don't trust you guys got your stuff together. I still don't even know what we're going to be doing. Because typically if you run a business, private corporation, you run it, there's a mistake. What do? We sit there, we go through, we're like, well, okay, great. All right, so what did he do? What did she do? What happened here? Can we see the emails? Can we see the exchange? He didn't do anything wrong. She's right. That one is a little bit strange on when he quit and when he put his letter of resignation in. Let's investigate it. Oh, so he started a business on the side and didn't tell us about it. And that was the one that he was selling us items. Let's investigate him. Have the lawyers go through it. They did. Oh, shit, he's guilty. Okay, great. Well, guess what? In the future, the next time somebody brings new companies for us to use, we have to see who the board of directors of that company is. We have to find that, so this is never going to happen again. All right, this is the new protocol. Let's move forward. That's corporations. That's private corporation. We don't have that there. So for us to, for the people to fully trust, I don't think it's going to happen unless we can, like the word you used, which was the perfect word, have closure. I don't think we've had it yet.
No, not at all. And again, compare the rage of the left when a 25-year-old teacher did not want to get the COVID shot because they were trying to get pregnant with their husband, and they had concerns. They had some questions. And these people insisted they be fired from their jobs. Yeah. Almost 1 million Americans, they had to be fired from their jobs. The rage, the outrage, all fueled by this affirming media. And then a guy was implicated in a bunch of mad scientists brewing up a virus that killed 20 million people, a generation of children now with learning loss. And people say, oh, well, you know what? He tried his best and let's just move on. And what? I mean, we've got to rebuild trust. And I think I hope everybody watches the film Thank You, Dr. Fauci. You know, Google suppressed it, so it's hard to find. But it's an incredible independent documentary that goes through what is an overwhelming accumulation of circumstantial evidence.
You know, if they watch it, they're going to come back and say, okay, Doc, what are we going to do about it? Because it's going to go back to, let's do something about it, right? Because that's the closure part.
Yeah.
So I have friends who will say things like this. They're like, man, I have guys here. They'll say, I feel like crap, man. I had to take it because at my job, if I didn't take it, they were going to fire me. And, you know, I feel certain symptoms in my body. And they'll say things like that. If my body's acting different, how can, do we get to the bottom of people who took it? Is there anything they can do to get any of it out of their system, or no? That's part of the risk you take by taking it.
It was an unexpected finding. They were downplaying it as the vaccine was being rolled out. And look, when it was a good match for the circulating virus at the time, at the end of Operation Warp Speed, when it was produced, it was saving lives. You saw a reduction in the severity of illness right in front of your eyes. But then young, healthy people, it turns out, have essentially no risk of dying of COVID, and nobody was honest enough to admit that. Fauci came from the HIV community where the message was everybody is at risk, right? No one should think they're not at risk of HIV. Everybody is at risk. And it was the same dogma that was put out there. And now we learned the virus particles were showing up in the breast milk of lactating mothers. We hear stories of long-term complications that were attributed to long COVID, and they were not. They were vaccine injuries. We've been looking into some of the vaccine injuries. We found that they were sitting on myocarditis data at the FDA. It was far worse at the CDC. They were designing scientific studies as research propaganda, as political propaganda. The studies were so flawed in their design, it was jerry-rigged to give you a result that the political party literally wanted. At the FDA, they fired the two top vaccine experts because they disagreed on the approval of the COVID booster in young, healthy kids. It got no media attention, but they literally put political interference at its highest peak.
So is there anything people can do to get it out of their system today, or no?
Not that I know of.
Got it. Yeah, because I'll talk to friends and they'll say, I think I have long COVID. And one guy, good friend, he's known in the space. You'll always see he's got COVID, he's got long COVID, he's got long COVID. Is long COVID tied to vaccines, or is long COVID tied to actually getting COVID? Do we know yet?
We don't know. We know that there are complications, long-term complications of the infection, of the COVID infection itself. And there are some people who are vaccine injured. And we all know people. It's not a case report. It's not one or two people in the country. We all know of people. I mean, I know of 3 people, not personally, but through 1 degree of separation, who died from the COVID vaccine. Okay.
Who died from the vaccine?
Yeah. One of them was here in South Florida. Okay. I know of a cardiologist in South Florida here who will tell you he's seen scores of people who have come in with the cardiac complications of the vaccine. Scores.
Wow.
But you've not been able to speak up on this. Facebook and the White House were literally censoring true stories of vaccine complications. So these are not ultra rare things that, and look, if somebody was ultra high risk of COVID, maybe it made sense when it was a good match. But now we have natural immunity. We have different circulating strains than were originally circulating. They're less dangerous. And these are nuanced topics. But the way that we kicked out kids from school if they didn't have the COVID shot, the way that we gave people a false sense of protection that if they wore a cloth mask, they could go visit grandma and they didn't have to worry about the cloth mask did nothing. You're breathing right through it, right through the pores of the cloth. And so it was basically a pandemic of lunacy, pandemic of misinformation. And the real information was nuanced and got censored.
Yeah, because when you think about the video clips that we all saw, you're a football guy, the Bills. You watch all these games, you're like, why are people passing out, right? You've seen those clips, Rob. I don't know if you have it or not. There's clips. I mean, here's one of them. There's a list of these, right, of people just passing out. We can't hear the audio, Rob.
These began tracing small patterns, inflammation, platelets, microclots, weeks after certain shots. Most never noticed, but for
These are athletes.
The immune system hits too hard. The same spike that's meant to
1598,
protect starts
1100 of
sticking
them
to
died.
vessel walls. Blood thickens, flow slows, boom, ischemia.
Lord, the audio
Doctors
a
call
little
it
bit rough.
vaccine-induced immune thrombotic event. Rare, yes, imagine, no. It's in the Lancet and NEGM. The question isn't if it happens, but why somebody's break the code. Genetics, gut, toxins, maybe all three. Because when the system built to defend starts to misfire, the result isn't protection, it's a stroke. They said
You can
stroke.
pause it right there. I mean, this is tough to watch. This is not easy to watch when you see these. These are athletes. They're running all day. They're exercising all day. They're supposed to be the healthiest ones. And then this happens to them.
Yeah.
Have we either investigated or started something to find out how many of these were tied to the vaccine, or because even the Bills linebacker, I believe, who was interviewed afterwards, cornerback or linebacker, I don't know what he was, but he played defense. When they interviewed Damar Hamlin and they said, what happened? He says, I know what it is, but I can't say it. I don't know if you've seen that interview.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, they interviewed him and they said, do you know what it is? He says, I do know what it is, but I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to say anything. It was like this secret sauce. You can't say what happened here. Are we ever going to, or maybe we already have we found that if there was a link between the vaccine and folks passing out, specifically athletes passing out?
So there's an NIH study that's looking at this, but here's the thing. These athletes were at a risk of dying of COVID of exactly 0. No athlete has ever died of COVID, okay? No professional athlete. And so the ultimate failure of the medical establishment was failing to recognize a 10,000-fold risk difference between a young person and an older person. And so they did, again, this Fauci HIV mindset. Everybody is at risk, almost as if everybody is at equal risk. And as a result, they had all these forced vaccination requirements for young, healthy athletes. A lot of NFL players were angry about the COVID vaccine requirement. But you know how the NFL is with their players.
Keep it quiet.
Right? They tight control of that messaging. I mean, they even control the news coverage of the NFL, right? The NFL network is owned by the NFL, right? So we're both NFL fans, but I mean, there is this side of the NFL that was ugly when you saw this vaccine requirement that the players did not want. I mean, the African-American community has been more suspicious of the medical establishment than the non-African-American community for good reasons, because of the Tuskegee experiment, this cruel and barbaric experiment on black people that ran into the early 70s. And so there's this general skepticism. And you saw this hesitancy in that community. And, when they're trying to blame Republicans for being the unvaccinated, and they're basically making it sound like it's Trump support. Number one, unvaccinated community by a percentage was African Americans. Right.
Yeah, and by the way, good for them for doing that. They were skeptical about it, but that was the interview. If you want to pull it up, Michael Strahan is interviewing Damar Hamlin on ABC, and here's what he had to say. Go for it.
You're 24, peak physical condition, can run circles around me right now. How did doctors describe what happened to you?
That's something I want to stay away from.
I know from my experience at the NFL, they do more tests than anything. And in the course
Something
of
I
you
wanna stay away
having
from.
your physical, did anybody ever come back with any, say you had a heart issue or anything that was abnormal?
Honestly, no. I've always been a healthy, young, fit, energetic, human being, let alone athlete. So it was something that was just, that we still processing, and I'm still talking through with my doctors just to see what everything was.
You can tell he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, you can tell.
He went through it. He thought about it. He's like, I'm probably not going to get the contract. They're probably going to kick me out. Am I going to get sponsorship money? Nike's not going to give me a contract. Just keep it to yourself. Like, I wonder literally in that 10-second pause that he had that ABC showed, what was he thinking about?
Yeah, even doctors, when asked publicly and on television, do you think this could have been a vaccine-related complication, they were afraid because the censorship machine was alive and active, and they knew all heaven and earth could come down on them for even suggesting it as a possibility. And that is how draconian our medical establishment has become now, where you were not allowed. I mean, this is like Chinese Communist Party kind of stuff, right? If you disagree, you could just disappear, right?
Yeah, well, look, I remember the movie, the concussion movie that Will Smith did. Was the movie called Concussion?
Yeah.
It could have been called Concussion. And they were not fans of that movie. And by the way, this movie was one of the reasons why my wife doesn't want one of our boys to play football. So this movie actually impacted, and they ran a survey, a number that said parents of kids who make over $150,000 a year have a higher likelihood of not allowing their kids to play football than parents who make less than $150,000. So there's a link between, we're not going to be touching that sport because it can have some brain damage on you, and stepping away from it. So I just, when I see this kind of stuff, to me, closure is important. And I think you guys got 3 years, because honestly, we don't know who's going to be the next president of the United States. There's a lot of people that are overly confident. Oh, yeah, it's going to be J.D. Vance. It's done. It's going to be J.D. Vance Rubio ticket, and this is going to go 12 years, and it's going to be fantastic. And then you go to Kalshi, and you look at 2028 candidates, and Newsom and JD are neck and neck, and it's not like it's a given. So the reason why I'm saying this, I think if in the next 3 years you guys don't get this, we may never come back and touch this ever again. I think this will be something that'll be just wiped. It'll be another one of those things that will be conspiracy. John F. Kennedy assassination, MLK assassination, 9/11. They don't ever want to tell us, and the trust in the U.S. government will be low again. I think you guys can increase the level of trust in the U.S. government and get it skyrocketing in ways we've never had. If certain things just get boom, 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 boom. You know what? I trust the investigation FBI did. No, James Comey and Letitia James, case dropped. Give me a flipping break. Yeah, Fauci, boom. No, nothing's going to happen. Oh, yeah, boom, nothing's going to happen. The average day-to-day voter, I'm not talking about the one that follows everything closely. The average day-to-day voter is not thinking high level stuff. COVID impacted them. They're just like, listen, can you just tell me what happened here so I can move on? Anyways, that's enough on COVID. Let's go to the next story I'm going to talk to you about, because we can talk COVID all day long.
We're talking about the primary bile duct now?
Yeah, for sure. No, you said two things, right? You said food supply was one thing your friends wanted you to get to the bottom of, and cure for diseases. Let's talk about cancer.
Yeah.
Is it profitable to find a cure to cancer? Isn't it more profitable to not find a cure for cancer?
It's not profitable if you take an existing treatment and repurpose it, because there's just not a lot of money in those generics, drugs that have been out, and there's many companies that make them now. But if you make a drug de novo and you are curing a disease, the market exclusivity, the marketing rights, it does make it profitable, and you're seeing huge profits. So the fastest area of healthcare spending is drug spending. And the fastest area of drug spending are these drugs called biologics. They're complicated molecules, and the complexity stems from them being derived from cells. You don't just make them in a chemistry lab. They are derived from a cell line. Well, there are generic versions of those expensive medications, but the FDA has set up so much red tape that companies are not pursuing those generic versions. So we cut that red tape. We cut the research and development cost in half. These drugs are amazing. We're also issuing these priority vouchers for a priority review. So if your company is making a product that's in line with our national priorities, that is domesticating manufacturing, meeting an unmet public health need, and the president's mission to make medications affordable by lowering drug prices as you saw with the most favored nation status, or MFN pricing, which means we get the lowest price of the developed world. In the United States, we're the largest purchasers of drugs. We deserve the best price. That's been the president's strong position, and that's why you're seeing certain medications come down now from $243 to $10. You just saw the GLP-1s come down from $1,300 in the announcement to a $50 copay, or $150 for the first couple months. Massive. We're not talking about 1 or 2% stuff. We're talking about massive reductions. Well, one of the vouchers we issued was for this medication for cancer that for certain types of rectal cancer shrinks the tumor into nothing, eliminates, melts away. If that technology is out there and people are candidates, what are we doing? What are we waiting for?
I mean, obvious reason. Obvious reason. I mean, why would they release it? So think about. You don't think some of these companies have the cure for cancer? Think about how many smart researchers we have. So somebody all of a sudden comes up and says, "Guys, we got this cure for cancer. This can help it. And let me show you. Here's what it looks like." Now the guy is going to be sitting there saying, "All right, we released this. Show us our charts. How much money do we make off cancer every year? 38%. Which drugs, what chemo, what medicine is tied to this? 38% of our top line revenue. How much would this be? This would be 6% of our top line revenue. So you want me to release a drug that's going to inject our top line revenue by 6% but get rid of 38%? Yeah, guys, let's take our time with this one. Keep the research.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're saying the medical industrial complex is making so much money off the current way in which it functions that if you come up with something that's going to just eliminate diseases that they can't poke and prod you and over medicate you for and operate on you for, that is such a threat to the business model that there's a machine that wants to stop it. So I understand why people are cynical, because the medical industrial complex has no incentive really to move in the right direction. They're profiting from sickness. But I will say, I don't personally think it's that intentional. I think the pharmaceutical companies get a pot of gold if they can make a leap in advancing a treatment. So this medication, for example, that melts away certain rectal cancers and other GI cancers, we're giving it a priority review. If the review goes well, and I expect it probably will, it's going to be on the market, and you're going to start seeing operations averted, people no longer sitting in the chemo chairs, not getting radiation therapy. Some of this stuff, by the way, doesn't work very well for certain cancers, depending on the type and the treatment. And so I do think I do still think there's an incentive to create some powerful treatments. Type 1 diabetes treatment. I'd like to see a meaningful treatment or cure for type 1 diabetes in this administration. There's a potentially promising treatment that we are tracking so closely. And here's how we do it. I personally go to the front lines of the FDA and meet with the scientific reviewers one-on-one. It's got to be one-on-one or you're not getting the full story, right? And I ask them, are you seeing anything that looks amazing? Something that gives you chills up your spine because it could be such a game changer.
You're asking that question?
I ask that question to reviewers. And most of the time they say, no, nothing really that much of a game changer. But then we'll find a diamond in the rough. And one of those was this treatment for diabetes where I don't want to get too much into it, but it looks amazing. And there's another treatment for another condition. And we're going proactively. So if one of the reviewers says, this early result, this data looks too good to be true, then we'll call the company, send us more data. Forget about the application and the margins and the font and the, all the dumb requirements government says. Just send us the data and we'll look at it and we'll issue these vouchers to get a decision out in weeks instead of, a year or years. So there's for example, about a month ago, an article came out in our top journal, the New England Journal of Medicine, for a type of childhood deafness a form of congenital deafness that's about maybe 1 to 3% of kids with congenital deafness. And they gave them a gene therapy delivered through a little device that restored normal hearing to kids with congenital deafness. They got normal hearing in 3 out of 12 kids, and 7 out of 12 got improvement in hearing. What are we waiting for, right? When you see that, the kid is deaf, and it had an impeccable safety profile. So we contacted that company days from that data being published. We are not in a receive-only mode. We're not a stingy librarian anymore at the FDA. We're proactive. So we're going out there, and you're seeing powerful treatments for some forms of blindness, deafness, pediatric conditions, rare diseases, cancers, and we're going to keep going. This is an entirely new approach, and I think we're going to deliver more cures and meaningful treatments for the American public in this administration. My predecessor in the Biden administration said his number one priority as head of the FDA was fighting misinformation. Well, our number one priority is not censoring Americans. It's delivering more cures and powerful treatments.
Well, that number one priority is fighting disinformation matches up with what World Economic Forum, I believe, said at Davos. That number one was on that list. Rob, is that pretty accurate that they said the number one risk? So they're aligned. I'm not surprised that they're saying that. Talking about coming up with certain medicines and competing. One day, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, we decided to go a little bit deeper on the patent laws when it comes down to medicine. And if I come out with a new, this is specifically for pricing with drugs, how expensive it is, you would see patents in medicine is roughly 20 years. Of course, after the amount of time it takes to go through its testing and approval, it's a long, lengthy process. They generally have 7 to 12 years where they have a monopoly on this product. But even then once the 20 years comes by, these great lawyers know how to add an additional 18 years of extension.
Right.
So the number was roughly 38 years that they end up having, give or take. That's a long time. And then you would see the price point charging $5,900. And then the day the patent's done with, 2 years later, it's $72 or $88, that drop off. You don't want to flirt with free market because that's competition. We have to have these guys have the incentive. If you remove the incentive, I think it's going to be catastrophic. But maybe we can change the patent laws. Maybe we can open up the patent laws to say, if you came up with it, allow others to sell it as well, and anybody else that sells it for 10 years, they have to pay you 50% of profits. Maybe we can get creative with the patent law. So the inventor, the creator of the patent says, you know what, Doc, I think, Marty, you're being fair with me. I'm willing to entertain this. And you bring the lawyers and say, guys, we'll give you 5 years from the day it gets approved. Forget the 20-year number. You got 5 years head of the game. But after 5 years, no extension. Give it up to anybody else. Anything they sell for the next 10 years, 50% profit comes to you. So I'm going from my distribution, one company, and now all of a sudden this drug is being able to be sold by Johnson, what do you call it? Pfizer, everybody else. They did $2.2 billion last year. Profit was $600 million. Here's a $300 million check. I'm happy with it. I'm using their salespeople become my. What can we do to creatively work on these patent laws that we have with medicine?
We have to fix the patent laws, and it's even worse than how you're describing. What happens is a company that gets a patent and gets a drug approved then will have dozens or hundreds of patents filed around that drug. And you might say, how are you filing more than one patent for a drug? Well, they modify the patent just a tiny bit, or they add one little molecule on a complex chain of molecules, and now it's a different drug. And so they just try to bum rush, like blitz the patent office with so many applications so that when a company comes along after the patent expires and makes a generic, the branded company will sue that generic company saying, oh, you're violating our patent. Well, you got 100 of them. And so it creates legal obstacles for a generic to come to market because it just creates the opportunity for more lawsuits. And
do you think there's something there? Like, do you think you guys can go in 3 years, be able to change the patent laws and open it up for them?
I wish we at the FDA could do that. It's really a congressional fix.
Wow. So that means, and what do you need on the congressional side? And how much money are these guys? Because Rob, can you pull up how much I think the medicine, the medical sector of lobbying is it's one of the biggest ones, if not the biggest one, right? On how much they're lobbying their politicians. If you put them up there, they're up there in the top 3, definitely top 3.
Rand Paul has a bill on patent reform, and there's a couple others. It's a bipartisan. It's desperately needed.
2020, they spent $13 million. 2020. You're going up against these guys.
We are.
What is the likelihood of being, so for us to change, so Rand Paul has a bill.
Yeah.
Have you seen this be something that the president or RFK Jr. has entertained driving and pushing? Because I haven't heard a lot about this. Is this something that's at the top of mind or not really?
Because it deals with patent law and it's outside of the jurisdiction of the FDA, the signals that we have given are that, hey, this needs to be fixed. But it's really something that involves members of Congress fixing. So I know there's support for patent reform, but I don't know where it stands from my vantage point at the FDA.
Yeah, it's called $713 million of federal lobby. That's amazing.
Amazing.
The amount of, and imagine how many of these guys are getting funded for their reelection. How much money they're getting to say, look, you better not entertain this one. You better not touch this one. So, okay. Well, I asked that question because, one, cost. The average person can't afford, certain things, and there's cures for them or their kids. It goes back to the movie. I don't know if you've seen the movie John Q with Denzel Washington. If you've never seen it, that is a movie you must watch because it's about your business.
John Q. Concussion, and thank you, Dr. Fauci. For all
I'm gonna do thank you, Dr. Fauci. But this is John Q with Denzel Washington. It is a very, very emotional movie that was shot 23 years ago. And there's a famous scene in the movie where he says, my son buries me. I don't bury my son. It is a chilling scene when he talks about it. But a lot of people are going through some of the stuff that they can't afford to, to pay for. Okay, so next thing to talk about. When I was coming up, I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I wanted to be Mr. Olympia. I said, one day I'm going to be Mr. Olympia. And the average height for Mr. Olympia is 5'8", 5'9", 5'10". I'm 6'3.5", 6'4". So for me, I didn't want to be 400 pounds off season. And there was this book that everybody had to read to learn about steroids. It's called the Steroids Bible. And it was multiple, first one, second one, third one, all of them you would go through. And everything about testosterone was bad that you would read about. And then today, for the first time ever, back in the days, nobody would talk about that guy's on steroids. No, he's natural. And I think a couple of the first people that came out and talked about it, Arnold may have spoken about it, and a guy named Bill Phillips made it very open with this magazine called Muscle Media 2000, which was hands down the best magazine in bodybuilding. And he wrote a book called Body of Life. He had a company called EAS. But today, guys will openly say, yeah, I'm on TRT. Yeah, I'm on HRT. What has happened what can you tell us from the perspective of steroids today? What does the average person not know about? Have we found, I read a book about 12 years ago called Ageless Man, where they were testing TRT and steroids with, different things to say, if the testosterone level is higher, your heart is actually doing better. What have we learned about steroids?
It's a fascinating subject, and I think you and I grew up around the same time, and steroids were seen as this way to get buffed up. And people do feel better on steroids. Steroids are a natural chemical. When you take exogenous steroids, there are some short-term benefits, but there's long-term harms. And that's why the medical community warned against people buffing up on steroids just to look better and feel better in the immediate short term. And then in the Olympics in the 1980s or so, people were taking testosterone as a performance enhancer. And all heaven and earth came down on those people. And that resulted in testosterone getting scheduled as a controlled substance, But the more that we've learned about the human body, the more we've realized now that there can be a role for testosterone replacement in men when they stop producing a high level of testosterone. And it provides some of the benefits of testosterone, including muscle mass. Now, this hasn't been proven yet as an outcome of taking testosterone replacement therapy, but do you know what the number one predictor of longevity is? Muscle mass. Now, it may be a function of the fact that those people are more active, but if you look at muscle mass, and we can measure it on a CAT scan, it is the number one predictor of longevity. So we are having, I think we're live here, right, when we're chatting. We're having, I think it's December 13th, we're having a forum at the FDA on testosterone replacement therapy in men's health because it has not gotten the attention it deserves. Some men are good candidates, but there's this stigma that it's maybe wrong or maybe has, short-term benefit but long-term harm. No, the more we learn about testosterone, the more we're learning that, say, low-dose testosterone can have long-term health benefits. So I'm not here to promote a product. I'm a regulator, but this has not gotten the attention it deserves. We have a guy, Brian Christine, who's a men's health expert, and he's going to be leading this. And, we just did this big announcement on hormone replacement therapy for women. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
We got great coverage on it, and I'm glad it did because this represents the biggest screw-up of modern medicine. The demonization of hormone replacement therapy for postmenopausal women. And, it came out of dogma. It came out of a Fauci-like figure at the NIH in the year 2002, about 23 years ago, who made this decree. And he had a study that he pointed to, even though the study was misinterpreted. And you actually looked at the details of the study that when it first came out, it did not show an increase in breast cancer that was statistically significant, yet he said it causes breast cancer. No subsequent study has found that it increases breast cancer mortality, but women were scared out of this treatment. It's a life-changing, life-saving, life-extending treatment for many women. When their body stops making estrogen between 45 and 55 years of age, they replace it with estrogen replacement plus or minus progesterone, and they feel better and live longer. It not only alleviates the short-term symptoms of menopause, that is, when I say short-term, it can last 8 years on average. We were told in medical school, some women have symptoms of menopause, but they're usually mild and they're just last a couple of years. In other words, just tough it up. These women are complaining, right? That was basically the male-dominated medical establishment. Now we know symptoms last 8 years on average, that 80+% of women have symptoms, and for most, the symptoms are severe. Where now they're more likely to get an antidepressant when they come in for their mood swings than they are estrogen, which can alleviate these symptoms of the hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, weight gain. I mean, marriages have been saved by hormone replacement therapy in postmenopausal women.
In what way?
Well, for example, one patient described, we just did a podcast with some experts in this field, and they said, a patient came in and said, every time I had sex with my husband, it felt like razor blades in my vagina because there's dryness associated with the menopausal changes. And so it can make sexual activity painful. And these symptoms were alleviated with hormone replacement therapy. So not only are the short-term benefits remarkable, but there are massively underappreciated long-term health benefits that are profound. And let me just mention a couple. Lowering the risk of fatal heart attacks by 25 to 50%. That's the number one cause of death in women. I mean, on a population
25
level.
25 to 50%?
Yeah. I mean, this is top studies in the journal Circulation, one of the top cardiology journals just 2 years ago. And it prevents osteoporosis, like 90% effective in reducing osteoporosis. It reduces the risk of a bone fracture later in life. If a woman makes it to 80, there's like a 1 in 3 chance she's going to have a hip fracture. And that can be the cause of death in many women because it leads to disability and surgery and then complications. Well, the root issue is the bones were weak because the estrogen level dropped off at menopause, and it's preventable with hormone replacement therapy. It also reduces cognitive decline later in life for a woman. So the benefits are so profound that there. By the way, there may be no medication in the modern era, with the exception of antibiotics and a few others, that can improve the health of women on a population level more than hormone replacement therapy for postmenopausal women. If it started within 10 years of menopause, it's a key feature.
So that means 60, because the study had a number 60 in it, right?
Yeah.
So starting 10 years before 60, so you're saying starting when you're 50 years old,
So
give or take?
women experience menopause generally between the ages of 45 and 55. And so your body really should not be going without estrogen for more than several years, because the estrogen keeps the blood vessel wall healthy. So it's generally believed that if you start at more than 10 years after the onset of menopause, or rule of thumb after age 60, that the benefit is not there and the risk-benefit ratio inverts. And so doctors generally don't recommend it after age 60. But most doctors haven't recommended it at all because of the dogma from the NIH 23 years ago that it increases your risk of dying of breast cancer, something that's never been found to be true in a clinical study.
And is that the one
trial.
that was released to the mainstream media first to kind of get some attention, and then that's what caused everybody to think that's those two tied to each other?
Yeah, it was very manipulative. They released it to the media without the data, and then they published the study a week later. And when we looked at it after it was published, we said, there's no statistically significant increase in breast cancer.
Who benefited from that? Who benefited from that article?
Individual careers in medicine were made. They were
Nobody financially. Like, it wasn't like a big pharma company that benefited from this.
No, this was the ego of people who set out. I mean, the lead investigator of that study had said before, we have to stop the HRT bandwagon. I mean, he was on a mission.
Yeah. So, and let's stay on this. With women, young girls, when you pull up data and you say, okay, I hear people will say, speaking to a doctor, we're at a soccer match, and he says, yeah, girls are having periods earlier than ever before. Why? Well, there's many different reasons. I said, tell me the history about it. And then we pull up the history, and it says, in the late 1800s was 16, 17 years old. And in early 1900s, yeah, right there. So from 15 to 17 years old. And it went to 12 and a half to 13 years old. And then went even lower and lower. And then today it's 11 point something years old. 11 years old. And some even, especially Black and Hispanic girls, beginning puberty signs at 8 or 9 years old, with some early as 6 or 7 years old. This is the earliest in recorded history. Why is that?
I think it's because of the number of exposures of substances and chemicals in the modern world that have estrogen-like binding properties. I mean, you can go to the river and test the water, and you'll find that there are things in there with estrogen-like binding properties in the modern world, things that have never been formally studied, but we know it binds to the estrogen receptor partially, not entirely, partially. And this is a huge issue. I mean, you talk about existential threats, right, to the human race. The age of puberty has been going down by a week and a half each year for roughly the last 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, in Europe, where they may not have some of these exposures, you still have girls going into puberty at age 14, sometimes 15. Something's going on, and we have not paid attention to this. It's in the MAHA report that this is a priority for us to look at, but something's going on. And I remember in med school, we'd learn this. They teach it in 2 seconds, just a flash line in the textbooks. And I remember that the instructor mentioned this. They were talking about puberty and the precocious puberty and other conditions. And they said the age of puberty is going down. It's now years earlier than it was a century ago. And then they moved on to the next topic in one breath. And I remember like, whoa. We're not going to pause and talk about this. And you have these issues in American medicine that live in these blind spots. And only intellectually curious people like yourself who ask about it prompts the medical establishment to look at these things. Because we have a medical system that's designed to play whack-a-mole with prescribing meds and operating on people. Prescribe, operate, prescribe, operate. And so you come in, and we've done this terrible thing to doctors in America, where you come in and you get on the hamster wheel and you're told, here are your tools, prescribe and operate, and you can only work within the confines of your clinic, and we're going to measure you by your throughput. And so these doctors become these busy beavers, just billing, coding, writing notes, prescribing and operating, billing, coding, writing notes, prescribing and operating. And you wonder why the burnout rates are higher than any other profession, right? So we've got to stop and ask, what are we doing?
Yeah, and so let's just say if I'm the establishment doctor, representative, and I say, what's wrong with it starting earlier? Well, how is that even a bad thing? Maybe it's a good thing that it's starting earlier. Maybe it's they could make that argument to say, if they start earlier, they get acclimated to it before they start the adult life and all this other stuff. What arguments have they made? Have you heard any arguments for saying that it's good that they're starting it earlier?
I have not heard those arguments. I've not engaged in this debate. I mean, one thing that I've seen written about is girls becoming pregnant earlier than their body is prepared to be pregnant. I personally have my own personal views, and that is that we are messing with God's creation when you see women undergoing puberty earlier and earlier.
You think what do you think about birth control pills?
I mean, I don't have a view on it.
Yeah, because I'm trying to see what's happened during that time that would change things. The first smallpox vaccine, was given. Can you check to see, Rob, when was the first small? It was
1799. Yeah, okay, 1796 in Europe, and then it came to the United States. Dr. Benjamin Waterhouse was trying to recommend this to everybody, and President John Adams was not into it. But then Thomas Jefferson believed in these vaccines and started the National Vaccination Program.
So could that have anything to do with it? Because again, patterns. What did we introduce that we didn't have before that all of a sudden changed things? I don't know when the first birth control was. Rob, can you pull up because when you're a kid nowadays, they'll say, my girl has acne. Yeah, let's give her some birth control pills. My kid's going through this. Yeah, let's give her some birth control pills. But she's not sexually active. Let's just give her birth control pills. And then later on, you're seeing all these side effects. And that was early 1900s, the idea began. Margaret Sanger opens the first birth control clinic in U.S., quickly shut down. 30s and 50s, researchers on hormones and ovulation make the idea of a birth control pill scientifically possible. 51, 57, the development of the pill. Scientist Carl Gerasi synthesizes a key hormone, enabling the creation of the pill. And then 50s, funding and activism, Margaret Sanger and McCormick pushed the research forward with Dr. Gregory Pincus and John Rock. The FDA approves the pill for menstrual disorders, not contraception. Women use it off-label. That's 57. And then the first official contraceptive approval was May 9th, 1960. The FDA officially approves Innovid as the first oral contraceptive pill. And then birth control is legalized for married couples, 65. Then legalized for unmarried women, 72. And then you have all these other things that comes up, the IUDs, which are horrible, the female condoms, implants, emergency contraception. Yeah, is there a study to look into? Is there somebody that's researching this even deeper that we can look into?
Yeah, there are teams looking at why puberty is going down in age. It's interesting in that chronology that you went through, which is fascinating. The early use was part of the eugenics movement, which people don't realize was alive and well and dominant and state-sanctioned in many states in the United States in the early 1900s. And it wasn't sort of judicious population control. It was poor people and people that were deemed, it used to be that if you were poor, it was assumed you were dumb. You were just not intelligent. And there was this sort of stereotyping. So there was an attempt to essentially reduce the population of minorities in the United States and people who were poor by giving them birth control, forced sterilization, surgically and in other ways. And that was a part of a massive campaign that even persisted in some states through, I think, the 50s. And it's a very dark chapter of the United States. But that was the initial part that you said when it was shut down after its initial...
You're talking about Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood and the history of her and, what things you read about her. You think, if you haven't read about her, you're like, oh, Planned Parenthood, what a sweetheart. She was probably a good... And then later on you realize this woman was like not today's word of racism. She's actually right there, the adherent of the eugenics movement. She argued that birth control would reduce the number of unfit people. Right. That's her words, and improve the overall health of the human race.
Right. This is the American eugenics movement. And this, we're like one living generation away. This is not like, the Battle of Babylon.
No, she died in 1966 at 86. So it's not and today folks defend Planned Parenthood as if it's the greatest thing for women. And what they don't realize is, I don't know what percentage of the abortions are black women, but a big percentage of them. High percentage of them. And, one of our guys here, Tom, calls it the black genocide because imagine how many, future presidents, entrepreneurs in the African-American community are no longer here because of what she did with Planned Parenthood. But God forbid you try to do anything with them. Any plans with these guys? Is there anything we want to do, you guys want to do with Planned Parenthood?
They are giving out a lot of puberty blockers. So, that's not right. Some kid doesn't like going through puberty. I mean, puberty is stressful, right? I mean, let's be honest. Childhood is stressful. I mean, the dynamics of kids interacting. And so a kid comes in, didn't want to go through puberty, and we as a medical field say, oh, just take these pills and we'll just defer it, kick the can down the road, and you can decide later what your gender is. It's not right. It's not right. I mean, you look at some of the indicators of the morality of our society, and it's scary. Thank God for President Trump. I mean, can you imagine the alternative right now?
Oh, my God. I mean, if Kamala was president today, do you know what that would like? I saw a video today. Man wins women's strongest, competition in Texas. I don't know if you saw this or not. And the second place was a woman, walks off, looks at the guy, shakes her head, and just, minds her own business, right? Is that it, Rob? Yeah, can you play that clip? Look at that. So, male adult film actor Jasmine Booker just won the title for World's Strongest Woman in Arlington, Texas, denying female opponent Andrea Thompson her rightful place on the top of women's podium. These are the types of things. And by the way, this is in Texas, out of all places. Now, of course, Texas is not approving this. It just so happens where the competition was held in Texas. With puberty blockers, with even the movement of transgender. Back in the days, like basic question for you. If I would ask you this simple question, because my boys one day come out and they start talking to me about someone in kid is gay, okay, and what does that really mean? If I were to ask you right now, where did AIDS come from, what would you say?
Speaking of the film, thank you, Dr. Fauci, they explore a non-traditional narrative which has not gotten the attention it deserves, and that is that it may very well have come from a lab in Africa.
AIDS could have come from a lab in Africa.
HIV.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In the state of New York, a couple years ago, a virus is spreading. And I don't know if it was the governor that said this or whoever it was. It could have been the mayor, could have been the governor that came out and said, hey, specifically to gay men, to maybe pump the brakes when it comes down to being, is that what it was?
Mpox.
Mpox is what it was. Maybe pump the brakes on being sexually active right now the next couple months.
Yeah.
Okay? Why would he say that? Why would he suggest that? Because if AIDS, and I remember the whole Anthony Fauci, what was the pill that the AZT, ATZ, am I saying it correctly? AZT, yeah. And I think it gets to a point that some people don't want to talk about what really is going on and kind of want to give the direction at a different place on what's causing this. You know, where maybe it's even some people's lifestyle on how people live. Is it healthy? Is it not healthy? This is a sensitive topic. Most people don't want to go to it.
That's right.
It's extremely difficult because who are you going to lose? Who's going to be not happy? We're already past this. But if we don't openly talk about this stuff, then you lose the argument with puberty blockers. Then you lose the argument with all the other things that's happening to kids, and they're confused because we're like, well, no, I don't want to touch that story. Dallas Buyers Club, you know, Matthew McConaughey, what was really going on? And no, let's not touch that story because that's a little too controversial. Let's just kind of say it came from a lab. Let's just say it came from here. And then you're supposed to sit there and say, really?
Yeah. I don't know where HIV came from, but how many people have Lyme disease, including people we know? Mm-hmm. Where did Lyme disease come from? I can tell you with a high degree of probability, it came from Lab 257 on Plum Island, just outside of Connecticut, 25 miles from Lyme, Connecticut, where the first case was described. How do we know that? First of all, you can read the book Bitten, and it's a great book. When the Nazi war criminal doctors were executed in Nuremberg, at least one of them was spared and brought to the United States so that he could, you know, his mind could be used by the U.S. military for so-called biodefense. And they put him on Plum Island. And he had said very openly that he believed an incredible form of biowarfare was infecting ticks. And that's what Lyme disease is. And then it shows up 25 miles away. And by the way, that's not the only thing that showed up close by. They found half rat, half deer carcasses on what's it called in the Hamptons, the last town, Montauk. Yeah, it washed up in Montauk. This is like in the 90s. What the hell's going on there? Again, a bunch of mad scientists doing things, and all these people have Lyme disease. How many physicians know that it came from Lab 257? That Lyme disease came from? Approximately 1%, right? Because these are things we are never honest with ourselves. That just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it, and sometimes we can cause more harm than we can good by messing with Mother Nature.
Yeah, I agree. I also think, you know, a part of this is, you know, pattern recognition. I'm from Iran. I'm Armenian. I'm Assyrian. You're Egyptian, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think if I'm not mistaken, you're a Coptic
yes.
Christian, right? Which,
yes.
by the way, the story about the 21 Coptic Christians of them being held up and saying, hey, you better, you know, denounce your belief in Jesus, and they didn't do it, and we know the story on how that story ended up for them.
Yeah, my aunt knew some of those kids. She has a program for poor kids in the garbage slums in Cairo, and some of those kids came through her program, her school and training, and then went out and got jobs. They would get jobs in Libya because there was money to be made. There were jobs there for the poor. And then they would send the money back to their impoverished families. So I have a bit of a personal connection with that story.
Yeah, and tragic story when you hear about this, right? But, you know, when it comes down to your faith, what you believe in, what you've gone through, but I come over here, I see some of the stuff that's going on with health. You're sitting there saying, this just doesn't make any sense. Why are you having a hard time explaining this? Like they say, well, if we look at pattern recognition, all right, where did AIDS come from? Well, they came from monkeys. All right, so is AIDS predominantly with straight men and women, or is it more homosexuals? No, it's more on. So then can we go a little bit deeper on this study to find out really what's going on? And can we just say it instead of trying to make everybody happy? It's okay. Like we all have certain things that we do, but we need to be educated about it. And then instead of looking the other way. Whether it's the Lyme disease, whether it's this, whether it's COVID, I think there are plenty of patterns, politically, what country you come from. If I want to get immigration to come in, and I will look at it and say, which country sends us the best and the smartest? All right, let's keep getting more from here that comes in. Which one sends us the most that become criminals and they cause havoc in America? Let's pump the brake with this here. Why? It's racist. No, it's called data. It's pattern recognition. It's not racist. A company hires from certain schools because they feel those schools raise better people. When I talk to Billy Bean from Moneyball and the movie Moneyball, I don't know if you've seen the movie.
Yeah.
At this point, we're promoting so many movies today. I hope you realize we're making people money today. This has nothing to do with the FDA, folks. Secretly, we work for WME Endeavor. We're promoting movies and actors. But in this movie, I interviewed this guy, brought him 3 times, Billy Bean. And specifically, he came to 3 of my business conferences with one request: please don't record. That's his only ask. And I said, great. Fascinating guy to have at the event.
Yeah.
I said, what do you recruit for? He said, we recruit for upbringing, how your parents raised you. Because if the kid is coachable, we can have an easier time training them and building them. Of course, physical abilities, how fast you run, your arm. And then you have the how-to skill set. And then, But they have these patterns they recruit for. Is that racist? No. Why do they bring these Dodger focusing on Japan right now? Dodgers probably has a headquarters in Japan. They're just like, who's the next Shohei Ohtani? Because their training routines are better. I just think if we go back to pure logic patterns to educate the American people and stop worrying about offending who, we'll make better health choices. But if we play politics, the people are like, stop with these politics. Just let me make a decision for myself with the research.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we're still playing a little bit of politics when it comes onto our health. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's funny. Mpox, you mentioned Mpox, it was called monkeypox, but there was a group of people at the CDC. I'm told it was Demetrius and those other guys that stormed out a few months ago. And they said, well, this is an inappropriate term because this could create a stigma. They wouldn't say it was a sexually transmitted infection. For weeks, they wouldn't say that. They wouldn't be honest with the American people that it was a sexually transmitted infection. After a while, people figured it out. And so they said they have to rename it Mpox. And there was a big effort to rename it Mpox from monkeypox. This is the same CDC that has pregnant people and pregnant persons.
It's out of control. It's like, just talk to me. Rob, can you pull up this article? This is the article. I mean, no one's going to know his name, but everyone's going to know the face. I just sent you a link, Rob, if you just want to put, there you go. I see what you're doing. So if you see this from PBS, pbs.org, this came out 3 years ago. Do you remember that face? Go up a little bit so the audience can see it.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody remembers his face. We're supposed to trust him. No? That's the guy that we were supposed to trust. Trust the science.
He was part of the cover-up.
Of course he was.
For the Chinese.
So the World Health Organization chief advises men to reduce number of sexual partners to avoid monkeypox. So why'd you name it monkeypox? That's offensive. Are you saying that they had sex with a monkey and that's how it got started? No, just tell us the full story. Right. So we can improve our lifestyle and how we live. And if you, for example, I have friends that know not using a condom increases your chance of getting sexual transmitted diseases, right?
Having multiple sexual encounters with men who you don't know. They couldn't say that. They couldn't say that was bad for you. It's that it's risky to have sex with multiple male individuals that you don't know.
What's wrong with saying that?
They couldn't say that. The CDC couldn't say that.
Why can't they say that, though? Because it's offensive. I have a friend that will never use a condom. And he's and he has had one too many partners. And he's paid a price for it. He's had some things where, in the military, nobody in the military wanted to get gonorrhea because they used to use this phrase dry rot. And I don't know if you know the story of what they do when you get gonorrhea in the Army. That's good you don't know. But you would hear a guy screaming like you've never heard a guy scream because of what they had to do. And I won't get too visual.
Please.
I won't get too visual. But it's not a good situation when it would happen in the Army. And the doctor would tell him, here's how you got it. And guess what he would say? Still not going to use a condom, doc. So, but guess what? At least he knows the risk because he's being told what it is.
This is the actual vector of transmission, multiple sexual encounters with men who you don't know. That was actually what they traced the transmission to, and they couldn't say it.
And you remember the laws they changed because at one point, if you were HIV positive and you had sex with somebody and you didn't tell them you're HIV positive, at one point it wasn't a crime. Then it became a felony, and then they lowered it, I believe, to misdemeanor. I think the state of California did this, Rob. If you want to look this up so we can correct what I'm saying on this. But you have to say, hey, just so you know, before we have sex with each other, you would tell the partner. And then great. So there's that, risk that the individual knows. One of the states had this, could have been California. Yeah. So I think it's more about just talk to us like adults.
Yeah.
Don't be politicians. Tell us what the issue is. Let us make a decision. Say it in a respectful way. Yeah, states that modernize the law, these states have reduced the HIV-related charges to misdemeanor now unless intentional transmission is proven. California, Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Jersey, Virginia, Washington, Illinois, Arkansas, partial, Kansas, partial. What is partial? Knowingly exposing someone without disclosures, misdemeanor, max 6 months. Intentionally, general felony, assault laws apply. This kind of was brought up in the Charlie Sheen documentary, which we're promoting again because we're the executive producers. Charlie Sheen documentary, if you haven't seen it, this was asked. When did you have unprotected sex with people when you were HIV and not tell them about it? He says, no, I told people and all of a sudden they knew the risk. Anyways, has to do with health. So I have to put a quick plug in to that documentary.
Got all the health topics covered today.
Get all the health topics.
What's left?
Yeah, so the one thing I want to get to is with the recent story of Tylenol when he came out with the ties to autism. So are you and RFK Jr. on the same page when it comes down to the potential ties, correlation with those who took vaccines, the amount of vaccines kids were taking, because he always talks about the data. Back in 1972, you only took 3 vaccines, and then nowadays, the numbers are you're taking 72 then before the age of 3, and all these numbers that they talk about. It's a big number. You can fact check me on this, Rob, to give the audience the exact number. Do you agree that there is a correlation with the amount of vaccines kids take to autism?
I don't know what causes autism. I have ideas, but the announcement on, and there's some incredible ongoing research. This is a massive priority. It's been blown off. Nobody really has been funding research in this space, even though it affects like 1 in 12 boys now in California. It was rare 2 generations ago. So this administration is trying to deliver for the parents who have kids with autism. And on the Tylenol piece, part of the investigation was talking to a lot of people in this field. And one of the people that the folks on Secretary Kennedy's team and himself had spoken to was the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health. And he has said, and I'm going to give you a direct quote, there is a causal relationship between prenatal acetaminophen use and the neurodevelopmental disorders of ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. That's the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health. So they did this calculus where they thought, well, hey, Tylenol's sometimes overused. You just don't need it. Like, why do you need to treat a low-grade fever if you're not uncomfortable? And we know there's overuse. There's actually a study out of Johns Hopkins, my former institution, that if you take acetaminophen when a kid is sick, it prolongs the duration of the sickness because the fever may be the body's natural way of trying to rid the infection and fight the pathogen. So they decided, hey, there's studies suggesting an association. There's studies that suggest no association. But this was a very strong view by the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health. Why not play it safe and tell people to minimize the use of Tylenol during pregnancy? They made very important disclaimers that were not covered by the liberal media. They said, talk to your doctor. They said sometimes you do need to take it. You have to weigh the risks and benefits. Those were never picked up. But they said in the precautionary principle, we want people to know what the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health believes in strongly. And I believe the president and this administration have a right to an opinion to agree with the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health. Now, the media had, a conniption. I mean, they went into a grand mal seizure. And the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health, who said he would be a part of the announcement, and then he said he couldn't make it and he would be willing to do media, when the announcement was broadcast, he went running for the hills. I mean, he was hiding behind a fig leaf because he's got donors who, have Trump derangement syndrome.
And when you did that interview with Gupta, and they asked, did you see the full interview that they put a statement from him afterwards, after the topic? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I went back to Sanjay Gupta. I said, you got your fact check wrong. Here's the direct quote from the guy.
What did he tell you?
He said, oh, thanks for this information.
But they didn't put it in the interview.
They tried to say, when I pulled this quote from the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health, they said, no, he said that there is a possible association. Well, he said a lot of things, but he also said there is a causal relationship. That's a direct quote on the record. It was part of a legal proceeding, so it's not. He wasn't,
So he was afraid, because I specifically want the audience to, because what they did is, while you guys are having a conversation, there it is, Rob. I'm going to send it to you. It's the interview with, if you type in Gupta and Marty. If you just type that on YouTube and then go to 26 minutes and 40 seconds, okay? That interview right there on CNN. This is from a month ago. So the guy from Harvard first agrees, then he doesn't want to do it. Go back to 26:30. Let's just go from 26:30 if you can, just to kind of see the exchange. Go from right there, Rob.
ADHD and autism spectrum disorder.
What is a causal association? Because I always thought there's associations, and then there's cause and effect.
Cause and effect. He thinks the acetaminophen is causing those. Now, look, he may not be right. I don't know.
I don't think he said that, though. I think
he said that.
But in the rest of that quote, he said there's a plausible causation. But but from what I read, he said that there may be an association between Tylenol and autism.
I'll get you the quote. He said a lot of things.
To clarify, we went straight to the source, Dr. Andrea Baccarelli, the dean of the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. And here is the statement that was sent to us. This is currently linked on the White House website as of this week. And Dr. Baccarelli says, in part, as we noted in our review, animal studies have independently suggested that prenatal exposure to acetaminophen can adversely affect the developing brain. This biological evidence lends support to the possibility of a causal relationship between prenatal acetaminophen exposure and neurodevelopmental disorders, including autism. So, the possibility of a causal relationship in animals. To be clear, overall, experts say that there are multiple causes of autism, and the science showing a connection between autism and Tylenol is not at all settled. Back to the conversation.
I think my job as a regulator.
You want to pause? So why did he do that?
He's trying to play fact checker and say, well, he didn't say that. And so he pulls another statement that's recent because now, since he went running for the hills after, Trump said, hey, women, when you're pregnant, you may want to avoid acetaminophen given the data. The guy was, running and he was in hiding. And so they put out a watered down statement about, there might be a causal relationship. And my point to Sanjay was, no, he said, quote unquote, there is a causal relationship. It is part of a legal proceeding, December 18th, 2023. And I sent it to him and I said, how could you fact check that and mix it up? And I sent him the actual quote and he said, oh, thank you.
That's it?
Yeah.
But did you reach out to the actual the head of Harvard, Andrea, is that his name, Andrea?
Andrea Basel.
Did you reach out to him and say, why did you change it and make it more watered down?
No. I don't, maybe Secretary Kennedy called him. I don't know.
So what did they fear? So they fear what happens? That the establishment's going to come out and be wrong? Is that what they fear? What is the real fear here?
I think it's just reactionary. I mean, this was a healthy debate in the field. There were studies on both sides. There was a review done by Harvard and Mount Sinai. The review came out weeks before we were about to talk about leucovorin as a treatment for some kids with autism. We were announcing this autoimmune mechanism whereby something triggers antibodies in a child to block the leucovorin folate receptors in the blood-brain barrier, and that may be a cause of autism. There may be many causes. And there's a treatment that bypasses that blocked receptor, and that's what we were about to announce. And then the study comes out of Harvard weeks before, and they decided, hey, do we also mention this controversy in the field? And they decided to mention it, to include it.
If I'm not even mistaken, Rob, if you want to pull this up, Tylenol did I think I retweeted this. Matter of fact, I know I retweeted. I just can't find it. Didn't Tylenol tweet?
In the
past, in 2017, that says, we actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today. This is from that's the tweet right there.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, we actually don't recommend this from 2017. So if the product says it, no one paid a price for this more than Tylenol. Tylenol probably felt the direct impact because people are like, well, babe, don't give the Tylenol to the kid. So I'm sure it's going to take a few months for them to see the impact because most people have plenty of Tylenol in their house. Like you don't need to go order Tylenol every single day, right? So they're probably going to pay the price probably now, maybe Q1 of next year. So what is his challenge if even Tylenol is saying that?
We are working on approving a drug for Trump derangement syndrome, but unfortunately, it will not work for stage 4 terminal disease.
You're joking about that, but that's actually that's actually a thing now, that patients go to their doctors for Trump derangement syndrome. There's even a lady that there was a story. I was on Jesse last night. They sent me the research, a lady that went to the doctor, and she said, I was on vacation the other day with my family, and I was having panic attacks because if I went and even saw him on TV, I would start having panic attacks. And the doctor's trying to find a way to cure this woman.
And, it's a function of it's not just in politics. Society has just gotten this toxic polarization fueled by the echo chambers of short form social media and cable news. And it's dividing our country, and it needs to stop. People need to realize, look, we are taking a data-driven approach here, but there's a segment of the population that just whatever we say will say the opposite. And it's very different from me. I was a cancer surgeon and researcher at Johns Hopkins for 23 years. Everybody wanted me to succeed in that job. The administration, my colleagues, my staff, the students, the patient families. I'd go into some random restaurant and somebody would recognize me. Oh, you're the guy at the hospital. Yeah, keep up the good work. Everybody in society wanted me to succeed. And I'm the same guy, and I walk over 90 miles to the FDA to run the agency, and because it's a sort of the politics of the context, a third of the country is cheering for you to fail.
Wow.
And it's a symptom of a larger problem in society. I don't think it's really about any one individual. It's the state of discourse in the United States.
It doesn't look like it's getting any better anytime soon. It seems like you saw what happened this week with sedition last week, with Mark Kelly coming out, making his comment. And I believe Pete Hegseth came out yesterday, Secretary of State, and announced that they're looking into it to the point where Mark Kelly had to send a tweet writing up his resume of what he's done in his time in service, right? And, Mark was, this one right here. So, Captain Kelly, not only did your sedition video intentionally undercut good and order discipline, but you can't even display your uniform correctly. Your medals are out of order and rows reversed. If you are recalled to active duty, I'll start with a uniform inspection. That's awesome. That is so funny to be able to pick on something like that. But let's talk about food. Let's talk about food and wrap up with food, because That was one of the first things you said your friends talked to you about with food supply. So if we make a list of countries with healthiest foods, okay, we looked this up yesterday. Japan would be at the top. And it would say what they eat the most, fish and tea. And in Mediterranean region was second, believe it or not. I can eat Greek, food all day. It's phenomenal. Yeah. It was number 2 with their olive oil. And then number 3 was South Korea, Iceland. And then the fifth one, a popular one here with Humberto and a couple of our guys, was Israel, okay, with high fruit. And then when you type in countries with the least healthiest food, we're at the top, okay? Number 1, most processed food per capita in the world, high sugar, and then it was UK, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. We're worse than Kuwait when it comes down to our food. We're worse than UK, Australia, everybody else. How do we get here and why is that?
It's so the field of nutrition science historically has been one of the most corrupted of all the scientific disciplines. It's first of all, it's very hard to do the studies. It's hard to monitor compliance. People don't even tell me their correct height when they come see me as a doctor. They're not telling me accurately what they ate the day before. So these studies are flawed. The studies were really rigged and funded by the food industry. And there was a charlatan in the 1960s named Dr. Ansel Keys who set out to tell the world that the reason why we had heart disease and so many health problems was because of saturated fat. And he led the campaign to get saturated fat out of every carton of milk in school and make it part of the national food pyramid and nutrition guidance. And the problem was he picked the wrong thing, because when you get saturated fat out, you have to put in refined carbohydrates to replace it to maintain the flavor. And so he ushered in a 50-year era of refined, ultra-processed foods in the U.S. diet. And these foods became addictive. They were chemically engineered to be addictive sometimes. We also had something called the GRAS rule, which meant if a company can deem a chemical as safe, or what we call GRAS, generally recognized as safe, then they can put it in food. We didn't ask for any data or studies. They could just deem any chemical that they create safe, and it was called the GRAS rule. By the way, we're undoing the GRAS rule in this administration. We're in that process. But we had the wrong information, and we're pounding these kids with things that raise their insulin levels to spikes never seen before in human history all day long. I mean, now kids have snack lists in school, right? You've seen these snack lists. Mm-hmm. We didn't have snacks during class and between class. You had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? So we're pounding them with these high glycemic index things. Their insulin levels are going high, and that moves fat into storage into the liver. We have an epidemic of fatty liver. And so we have all these health problems stemming from glucose metabolism, high insulin, and what we call insulin resistance. That is, the cells can't handle all the sugar in the system, so they start trying to block it. And that is at the root of probably half our chronic diseases, if not more. We've got to talk about school lunch programs, not just putting every 6-year-old on Ozempic. We are doing SNAP waivers so that we don't have to use tax.
6-year-olds on Ozempic?
Yeah, that's the big push now by the American Academy of Pediatrics. That's the push. They're trying to lower the age from 12 to 6.
Putting 6-year-olds on Ozempic?
Big push.
GLP-1s?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is not their fault. We want to blame the kids, but this is not a willpower problem. This is something adults have done to children by manipulating the food supply that's in front of them. And so you put these vibrant colors with artificial petroleum-based food dyes in ultra-processed foods that have chemicals designed to be addictive, and then you blame the kid for wanting more. There's a weird thing that some food does where you consume it and you're full, but you're still hungry. Your appetite's still there. Mm-hmm. And so you want more. And studies have even shown the vibrant colors on these cereals play with the developing mind of a child, and they want more. And so it's not rocket. This is not the riddle of the Sphinx. This is not rocket science. This is very obvious what's going on. So we took action to remove all petroleum-based food diets from the U.S. food supply. We're rewriting the food pyramid. We're ending the 50-year war on saturated fat. We're talking about the types of grains, the grains with fiber and that come from good soil are healthier. Why do I have patients with chronic abdominal pain that we do everything we can in Western medicine, nothing works, then they go to Europe for a year for a study abroad program, and they're cured. What do? They just ate the food in Europe. So we are...
Such an easy fix to do. But again, going back to lobbyists, okay, just for the grain, the agricultural industry, in the amount of money they spend on lobbying, I think in 2024, 2023 was $177 million. How do you fight that? It goes back to the same thing.
The same thing. It's a big force. Thankfully, President Trump has told me, and Secretary Kennedy, you do what's right, you go big, you go bold, and don't worry about the corporations and the lobbyists. We've never had that freedom in government to talk so openly about this. If I were in a prior administration, I'd have 50 text messages after this interview saying, oh, how dare you offend this lobby and that lobby. No, the president has told us, go big, do what's right, and go bold, and don't worry about them. And so we're rewriting the food pyramid. It'll come out soon. It's going to be a game changer. The SNAP waivers now it's the first ever where we're allowing states to not use taxpayer dollars for the foods that we deem bad for kids. We're seeing a renaissance in school lunch programs. We are now talking about natural light exposure. We're talking about the quality of sleep and circadian rhythms in children. We're talking about why do kids have attention deficit disorder? Why do are they on antidepressants? Not just give them more and give them the next level. So we're doing a ton on food. It's exciting. We're also eliminating unnecessary animal testing. We're doing it in a humane way. We're doing a lot. The food program led by Kyle Diamantis is crushing it at the FDA. It's a big part of the FDA. It's been ignored. A lot of the doctors come in with drug backgrounds, and they just kind of let it sit there. We've got a ton of reforms that are coming out, and we work closely with USDA and Brooke Rollins.
That's great. You know, yesterday we're having a conversation with a couple of our friends, and one of our guys says it was harder to quit. He says, I was able to quit smoking cigarettes. He smoked cigarettes for 10 years. He was able to quit. He says, but he's having a very hard time quitting sugar and the addiction to sugar. And I've seen friends addicted to a lot of different drugs over the years. I've taken friends to rehabilitation facilities for them to stop using drugs. 14 days, you know, they have to do all these things. But how are you handling, or what can families learn more about the addiction we have to sugar? Most people don't even know this. There's sugar in ketchup. You're like, why do I like ketchup so much? There's a ton of sugar in ketchup. Ketchup has sugar? Yes. What else has sugar? You kind of go through these, dressing you use when you're having salad. Why do I like the salad dressing so much? Because there's some sugar to it. So are you doing anything to also, hold some people accountable to anything and everything they can see to put sugar in for people to get addicted to? They're doing it. What are we doing about that?
So we're looking at putting front of package labeling on added sugar on food containers and packages. That's going to help educate folks. We put out something called a request for information from the industry. We want a unified definition of ultra-processed foods, something we never talked about with the old food pyramid and dietary guidance. Obesity is an addiction to sugar. That's what it's a glycemic addiction, if we're being honest. And so you're right, you can go cold turkey from cigarettes, but it's hard. Like 3% of people who try it succeed going cold turkey with cigarettes. Many of them need some kind of aid to ramp off. But same with glycemic addiction. If you got a significant glycemic addiction. So we're addicting kids to sugar, and then we're blaming them for the addiction that we created in them. It's insane. And so we have to educate people. We're trying to get the word out. We're talking about it. And we want people to know that sugar was ignored entirely in the dietary guidance because the industry liked having a addictive substance that you never talked about. We're talking about protein now. We need more protein than we thought. But obesity is in part a glycemic addiction.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happened there. And last but not least, with this vaping thing that's out with 708, you're seeing in it, and as well as other places that they're selling it. If I'm saying it correctly, 70H. Am I saying it correctly?
Yep.
What is 70H?
70H is an opioid sold in many vape stores in the United States. And you might think, how can you just sell an opioid in a vape store? But people don't recognize that 70H, which is a new synthetic concentrated chemical sold in gummies and food, drinks.
Wow.
It goes by several names. 7-hydroxy, it's called just hydroxy, hydroxymetragenine, metragenine, MIT. You'll see this on packages of things sold in vape stores, and people should know it is an opioid. We're not talking about the trace amount of 70H in the kratom leaf. We're talking about synthetic concentrated 70H. Parents need to educate their kids that this is an opioid and you don't want to touch the stuff.
Is it true that it is 13 times stronger than morphine in its effects?
It binds to the opioid mu receptor 13 times more tightly than morphine. And so we don't have any research on this new opioid. And so we've got to tell kids, like, don't play with fire. And we have heard stories of kids found dead with 7-OH wrappers at their bedside. So we want the school districts, houses of worship, we want everyone to know about 7-OH and educate your kids. Do not mess with it.
Yeah, this is not good when you're going through it. And I think the biggest thing at the end of the day is for parents to be educated to make good lifestyle changes. Every time I have someone on the podcast that's like, the last time I had Celsius to drink. You know when's the last time I drank Celsius? Is the day we had Paul Saladino on. I don't know if you know who Paul Saladino is.
Yeah, great guy.
He's with Maha.
Mm-hmm.
He works with Maha as well. He came in, he told me, that's it. That's the last time. January 27th is the last time I drank Celsius. And I would drink Celsius every day. It's the last time I had it because of what he showed me. So this is why we bring brains and experts like you to make us smarter.
Thanks.
And I appreciate you for your time today. This was great. Really enjoyed the conversation. Is there anything you want to drive the audience to for them to go learn more? Is there a website? Is there anything you want them to go to?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And I'm disappointed we didn't talk about pancreaticobiliary diseases, which I thought we were maybe going to talk about. But
one of these days.
One of these days. But no, our FDA website has a bunch of information. It's great to connect with you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. Great having you on as well. Appreciate your time. Appreciate for coming out. Take care, everybody. We'll see you guys tomorrow. God bless. Bye-bye, bye-bye. So we're finally doing this.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Head of EPA, Representative Lee Zeldin, youngest attorney in New York at the time, lieutenant colonel in the military. In a short period of time, you've done a bunch of different things. But it's great to have you on a podcast.
Man, you don't want to live your life filled with boredom and regret. You know, we only get one shot at it. Everyone out there in the audience, you know, it's the start of the day. How are you going to spend it? Make it count.
I'm with you. No, I love it. We're on the same page with that. But right now, the name Lee Zeldin the last 48 hours is everywhere. Everyone's looking at Lee Zeldin because apparently, according to this lady, I don't know if you know what her name is, Crockett, Jasmine Crockett, according to her, not only did you have one Jeffrey Epstein donor, you had two of them. That's how great you were doing. And I just want to start off with reacting to this real quick, and then we'll get into all the other stuff because it's trending right now. So here is Jasmine Crockett 2 days ago, the subcommittee on oversight on stage talking about you tied to Jeffrey Epstein. Go ahead, Rob.
Folks who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio. I just want to be clear. If this is the standard that we're going to make, just know we're going to expose it all. And just know that the FEC filings, they are available for everybody to review. This is absolutely ridiculous.
So now she's saying this. She called you. When you first heard this, what was your initial reaction? I mean, I read your tweet, but what was your initial reaction when you heard this?
I mean, well, so the first reaction was like, I'm pretty sure that Jeffrey Epstein never donated to me. Like, I contact a couple people on the team, and I'm like, all right, can you just confirm this for me? Because I'm pretty sure that Jeffrey Epstein never donated to us. And you could search it. She said that it's a 20-minute Google search, whatever. It comes up so fast, and it says occupation physician. That Jeffrey Epstein that she's talking about obviously is not a physician. And then you look at the date, and talking about like common sense, head scratching. The date of the donation is after that Jeffrey Epstein was dead.
Stop it. That I didn't know.
Yes.
The
donation came in after that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't even alive anymore.
Wow. Okay, there you go. April 2020 and August 2020, $1,000 donation from a Dr. Jeffrey Epstein in New York, which, by the way, can you imagine if your doctor's name is Jeffrey Epstein? People ask you, honey, where are you going today? I'm going to go see Dr. Epstein. Which doctor? Dr. Jeffrey Epstein. That guy has to change some part of his name to have to deal with this here, right? To give money to you.
But you've seen Office Space.
Yes.
Right? And there's that scene that the one character is Michael Bolton. And the same point was made. It was like, okay, well, why don't you just change your name? He's like, why should I have to change my name? He's the one who sucks.
Michael Bolton in the 90s, he had a couple hits, right? If you know Michael Bolton, you have to be over 40 years old. There's no way somebody in their 20s or 30s know Michael Bolton.
Oh, yeah, no. I think maybe 100% of your listeners right now under 40 are like, what are they talking about?
Who is Michael Bolton? But by the way, what I love about talented people in politics, how great they are at spinning. Some of them who know how to spin, you got to give them credit for how great of a job they're spinning. So here's Caitlin Collins asking Crockett about the mistake she made. And this is her answer about tying you to Epstein. And she still is defending herself. Go ahead, Rob.
About Republicans taking money from a Jeffrey Epstein. Here's what you said. Cabinet secretary, he responded and said it was actually Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, who's a doctor that doesn't have any relation to the convicted sex trafficker. Unfortunate for that doctor, but that is who donated to a prior campaign of his. Do you want to correct the record on the people that you
Listen, I never said that it was that Jeffrey Epstein. Just so that people understand, when you make a donation, your picture is not there. And because they decided to spring this on us in real time, I wanted the Republicans to think about what could potentially happen, because I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So my team, what they did is they Googled. And that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey Epstein. Unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out and just tell lies. Because it was not the same one, that's fine. But when Lee Zeldin had something to say, all he had to say was it was a different Jeffrey Epstein. He admitted that he did receive donations from a Jeffrey Epstein, so at least I wasn't trying to mislead people. Now, have I dug in to find out who this doctor is? I have not. So I will trust and take what he says, is that it wasn't that Jeffrey Epstein, but I was not attempting to mislead anybody. I literally had maybe 20 minutes before I had to do that debate.
Yeah, but people might see that and say, well, you're trying to make it sound like he took money from
I did not know.
A registered sex offender.
No, but I literally did not know. When you search FEC files, and that's what I had my team to do, I texted them and I said, listen, we're going up. They are saying that she took donations.
Right, but someone might say, well, your team should have done the homework to make sure it wasn't the convicted sex trafficker.
Within 20 minutes, you could not find that out, not from just doing a quick search on FEC. So, number one, I made sure that I was clear that it was a Jeffrey Epstein, but I never said that it was specifically that Jeffrey Epstein. Goodness. Because I knew that we would need more time to really dig in.
How do you react to that?
The occupation is like you said. We just go to FEC and it says Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, it says occupation physician. We were talking about the dates a second ago, and if you don't know yet, then you do more research before you go to the floor of the House of Representatives. Now, I mean, I feel like as far as your audience medical disclaimer, I mean, if you feel inclined to watch that video more than once, I would caution you not to watch that video more than like 4 or 5 times, because I actually think that could do brain damage.
Yeah,
you could maybe do 3, 4 tops. Don't watch it more than that.
She may be their leading candidate for 2028, if not one of them. Can you imagine, like, the Democratic Party chooses her as their candidate for 28? I know with the whole redistricting thing, she's probably going to end up losing her job. And we were talking about earlier, she may run for Senate. But maybe before we even move on with this topic, you were in New York. What did you know about what Epstein was doing in New York? There's a bunch of things right now. The Epstein, they voted for it, I think, Tuesday, 427-1. Senate majority out. It's going to be out there. Who was Epstein to you when you were in New York? Because you almost beat Hochul as a governor, first person to get that close as a Republican to being a governor of the state of Florida, less than 6%. That's how close it was. They never thought you would be that close. So you're someone that's a strong power player in New York. Who was Jeffrey Epstein to you?
I mean, the moment the story popped, it was, that was it, like game over as far as this guy goes. I mean, yeah, I guess he gets his day in court. You're innocent until proven guilty. We have a criminal justice process. But, there was, I mean, I didn't have people around me all like, I don't know, I think he's innocent. I mean, it was just...
You had people around you
No.
the
opposite. Like, I can't think of anyone at any point around me in New York saying... like defending this guy. I mean, it was the guy went down pretty fast.
Yeah, he did. And now, releasing the information, you're seeing what Larry Summers is doing. Just out of curiosity, I mean, I thought Bill and Hillary Clinton were going to be, weren't they supposed to do something in September or October that they kept delaying it? Did you hear? Were you aware of this? That they were subpoenaed? And there's even a clip of James Comer saying, hey, what are you going to do? Are these guys eventually going to testify? Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Yeah, right there. Clinton subpoenaed to testify in congressional Epstein investigation. Are you aware if anything's eventually going to happen with these guys? Are we going to see them having to answer questions about Epstein?
I mean, I would have to completely defer to the congressional committees, the chairs, to be able to answer that question. I don't have any inside scoop on that one.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk about your job, which is the administrator of EPA, okay? There's a few things I want to talk to you about. One is governorship in New York, because polls just came out with Hochul against Stefanik. I think it's a Siena poll that shows Hochul is ahead by 20 points. I don't know if you saw that or not. I'd like to see that for, governor of New York. 2, Mamdani. I think Mamdani is coming to visit the White House with the president, and the president's incredible... noble, generous tweet about him inviting him. I don't know if you saw the tweet, how he coined it. It's very interesting. I want to talk about that. And then with EPA, a lot of things are tied to you. So fires, I think wildfires are under you. I think you got a bunch of different elements that are with you, right? So even right now with what's going on with Iran, me being from Iran tested cloud seeding like Dubai did, and now they got flooding going on all over Iran, Abadan, all these other cities.
We got a lot to talk about.
We got a lot to talk about. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm interested in seeing where we're at with this. So let's start off with New York. So Mamdani wins the mayoral seat. Okay, so he's the mayor of New York. He's in there, takes out Sliwa, takes out Andrew Cuomo. And the moment he's in, President Trump now tweets this, I think yesterday on his Truth Social. Communist mayor of New York City, Zoran Kwame, very important to put that middle name in there, Mamdani, has asked for a meeting. We have agreed that this meeting will take place at the Oval Office on Friday, November 21st. Further details to follow. What do you think that meeting is going to look like?
So I have spent a lot of time with President Trump where the topic of New York City comes up, and this is personal. This is his life history, his business, his family, his upbringing. If you ask President Trump about what he wants for the future of New York City, he genuinely, deeply wants to see safer streets. He wants to see economic prosperity. He wants New York to succeed and thrive. His concern over the issues that will come up at that table, it's not like this is some business meeting, a professional meeting that lacks that strong personal connection that the president has. Like, he wants to help, and he is concerned with the direction of the city, as we all are. I mean, I saw it during 8 years of de Blasio, and it was amazing that the city survived those 8 years, especially what we experienced there in 2020. When I was running for governor in 2022, inside of New York City, there were so many Democrats, independents, people who are not Republicans, who were supporting our campaign because they wanted to be able to get to their job without fear of getting attacked. They wanted to ride a subway. They wanted to be able to afford to survive. Now they're adding this like congestion pricing, this tax in order to be able to get into the city, and it's hitting people who are struggling to make ends meet. It's like one more thing that gets them closer to that final last straw where they leave. So when I'm running New York State at that time, 2022, it's 22% Republican. 3.5 million more Democrats than Republicans.
New York State.
And you have so many people who have gone to Florida, Texas, the Carolinas, Tennessee, because they feel like their money will go further, they'll live life freer and safer, and this isn't about putting New York City in timeout. Like, they're gone permanently, not looking back. And what so many people are worried about in this moment, with Mamdani coming in and wanting to increase taxes on people who shockingly are still there after all of it, is that it will be that breaking point for more people and like when that billionaire leaves, it's like, oh, the billionaire can afford to pay taxes. Yeah, but the billionaire, would you rather have the billionaire give you whatever he's giving you today or she's giving you today, or zero? Because they're leaving down to Florida and elsewhere so easily. The business, the jobs, and you're not going to be able to get back. So I think for the president, the meeting is personal in a very positive way. Like he's the president of the United States, and you have his full focus and attention, and he genuinely wants to help. But I'll tell you what, like, don't expect this president to play along with the destruction of the city. Like, if you come in and like, hey, this is going to be some kind of negotiation, we're going to talk to the president into playing along with something that's going to set the city back. Don't try to go down, try to open up that door with this guy, because that isn't a door.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, what gave me that feeling is this tweet. He doesn't say the mayor of New York City, Mamdani, is coming for a meeting. He said the communist mayor. So this tweet isn't for us. This isn't for you. This isn't for the voters. This is only for one person that he voted the way that he did. It's to Mamdani. He wants Mamdani to know, you're not coming here in a friendly place for us to sit down, come and see what you're going to be doing. How much does Mamdani need him? Because, when he got elected, he said, we're going to raise taxes by 2% on billionaires, and that's going to give us this much. And then we're going to raise the corporate taxes and match what it is in New Jersey, because it's going to be an increase of 4.2, 4.3%. And that's going to give us our $6 billion or $5 billion that he needs. I don't know the exact numbers, but to be able to fund the free buses, the this, the that, the this, right? And then Hochul, while he's running, she's not saying anything. And then he wins. Then she says, no, we're not raising taxes on billionaires on the city. Now, 4 days ago, they had a meeting. Now she's saying she's willing to entertain raising taxes, corporate taxes on businesses in New York City. She's willing to entertain it right there. Considering raising corporate taxes, sources says, of November 14 after the meeting. So, but how much does Mamdani, obviously he needs Hochul, but how much does he need President Trump?
So here's the first threshold question. What's more important to Mamdani? Is it to get reelected in 4 years? Is it to win a Democratic primary for New York City mayor or something else in the future? Or is his priority right now the future of New York City? Is he prioritizing his job? Like he cares about the city he was just elected to be mayor of. Because if it's the latter, then he needs President Trump a lot. If he's only focused on trying to win a Democratic primary, then Mamdani's coming into this meeting and he's thinking, okay, I don't really care what happens behind closed doors. But as soon as it's over, I can't wait to get to the media cameras. This is like the Senator Schumer play. This is what you see. I was inside of the West Wing when Senator Schumer came into the White House, and like he was sprinting past me to get out and Hakeem Jeffries was right behind him. He was sprinting out to get to the cameras right outside of the West Wing. And then after he does his talk with the journalists, the reporters, whatever, he comes back in and he's like at a third the speed and he's like catching his breath. If Mamdani's focus going into that meeting is just to sprint out to the cameras afterwards, then maybe it doesn't matter in his mind what happens inside, because all he cares about is speaking to that base. But what's most important? I mean, like, there's time for government, and there's time for politics. If it's the day before a Democratic primary and you're messaging to those Democratic voters, we all get it, we expect it. The election is over. Now it's time to lead the city. And as it relates to the money that the federal government ends up sending towards the state, if it's about the partnership, it's safety. I mean, President Trump is securing big cities. I've seen it inside of Washington, D.C. When President Trump sent in the National Guard in August, like overnight, all of a sudden, things just started to immediately get safer. And he's doing that in other cities as well. Like, the president doesn't want to bring these resources to New York City for the purpose of, setting a city back. He's not doing it for a bad intention. Like, he wants to clean up the city that he loves. And there's so many federal resources, even beyond money, where, having this support, building those bridges, shows that you're a real leader. I mean, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're elected to become a mayor, a governor, or a president, having that the ability to reach out across party lines and build a coalition. President Trump, I've seen it so often. When a member of Congress calls, I remember there was this member of Congress comes in the first term, and he says, "Can you introduce me to President Trump?" I said, "You're a member of Congress. Just call the White House." I gave him the number. I said, "Just say it's Congressman so-and-so, and I'd like to speak to the president." I said, "He'll probably either come right on the phone immediately, or he's busy with something. He is actually busy with something, and he'll call you right back. You're a member of Congress." And sure enough, I mean, it was that easy. And this member of Congress who's never spoken to, never met President Trump, is instantly on the phone having a conversation with the President of the United States. The president, he is so accessible, and he's a great listener. Like, there's a great opportunity for Mamdani to come in to state a case on anything and everything where there can be common ground and bridges built. And then this president who wants to see New York City successful, this guy he's a man of his word. The president will come through and help New York City thrive. So the important question is, what do you need?
Well, I mean, what he needs, I don't think the president agrees with, because you said something. It's what does he want to do, right? So after he won, remember then when he gave that divisive speech, "I know there's one person listening right now, and that's President Trump. I got 4 words for you. Turn up the volume." And then boom, whatever he said about volume, and they start raising, and then afterwards, like, I said we didn't need any more money. We need money. And then now he's talking about $65 million he wants to raise for his transgender, gender affirming surgeries, whatever he's talking about. This was a couple of days ago. So what can he ask for that the president's going to say yes to? President's not going to agree to raising taxes on the city. I mean, he can't be involved in that because that's the state, that's local. What can he agree with? Where could there be something that they have a commonality with?
I mean, if I had to guess, Mamdani comes in wanting to talk about support of congestion pricing, he wanting to talk about infrastructure projects, stuff like rebuilding Penn Station, the 2nd Avenue subway. I imagine there'll be some type of a conversation about law enforcement, whether or not Mamdani wants to get into it where it's divisive, and he's not trying to agree on anything, and just wanting to have a debate, and just wants to trash talk the great, amazing ICE officers and others in law enforcement. I mean, that would be non-productive. But if he wants to broach some of these other topics and find common ground, I mean, right now there's investment. The president of the United States is bringing in trillions of dollars investment all throughout the entire country. Yep. Since I was confirmed in February, I've been to all 50 states. And whether I'm in Idaho Falls, Idaho, where a new nuclear facility just broke ground, and Cheyenne, Wyoming, with a new data center, West Memphis, Arkansas, with a new data center. I'm going to these locations not where it's like, hey, in 3 years we're planning on spending $4 billion. I was just in West Virginia, where multiple businesses I was visiting are all ramping up. They're all scaling up. And I was with the president in Pittsburgh for an AI summit, and they were announcing $93 billion coming to the Keystone State that day. And I'm sitting there as a New Yorker for a moment, putting that hat on, and I'm thinking, man, none of this money is getting announced to go to New York. Why is that? It's not a coincidence. The reason why the money's going in Pennsylvania and not New York is because of the policies. In New York, where you don't allow the extraction of natural gas, you're not approving enough of these pipelines, you're banning gas hookups on new construction, you want to ban the sale of gas-powered vehicles, you set climate goals that you will not achieve, and in the attempt to achieve it, you will cause a lot of economic pain on the people who can least afford it. Maybe Mamdani is smart enough to come in and say, hey, I see you're bringing in trillions of dollars to the United States of America. What do we need to do in New York City to be part of it? Because I don't want to be pushing out people and businesses and jobs. I want to bring them into the city and and then Mamdani should just shut up for the moment and listen to the president, because the president has a lot of ideas and experience and ways he can help.
So then the question becomes, but if let's just say he knows the optics as well, if it seems that they are too friendly and he is agreeable, that's not a good look for AOC. That's not a good look for the crew that wants to paint him as the enemy, because they can't, the risk there lies, and he's aware of this, because to me, Mamdani gives me vibes of our Zelensky. Where Zelensky came the first time around and he said, well, you yourself, and you don't have the cards. I'm not playing cards, Mr. President, right? That meeting, the first one. And then second one, he came, he wore a suit. I think Mamdani is a Zelensky type of a guy, that it's optics, and between the loyalty of the people that elected him, that want free things, versus also the people that kind of AOC kept retweeting his stuff. So AOC is a major kingmaker of New York in a strange way. She is. She's got a lot of power and a lot of juice. He can't lose that. He can't lose them. He sold Trump as the enemy. If all of a sudden now they're seeing mushy, friendly, they're going to be like, wait a minute, you're a traitor. The likelihood of me seeing this going that way, I also think if he comes in trying to push too hard, would he want a face-off with Trump to say, I'm not afraid? I went to the White House and I told him to his face that if you don't do this to the great state of New York, I see that. I see optics. I don't see diplomacy with him wanting to work with the president. Am I wrong?
I mean, there's a massive range of possibilities of how this can go. And I don't know Mamdani well enough to know, like, when he wakes up tomorrow morning, like, which shoulder? By the way, I don't know if it's like a dark voice speaking to him on both shoulders, or if there's a part of him somewhere, like there's a voice, there's counsel, somebody he listens to who would provide him good advice. Like, okay, the election's over. You now have to be the mayor of New York City. The best thing that you could do, if you're thinking about your future years down the road, is to be able to put together big successes.
Yeah.
Like real big successes. And if over the course of 4 years that you are the mayor, the city becomes less safe, you have massive more budget issues, people are fleeing, and you raise taxes and people are leaving because of it. This is an opportunity for you to show X, Y, and Z. Like if he's got that voice that maybe he wants to listen to tomorrow, I mean, then there's a totally different path and opportunity for him. But I don't know him well enough to know what side of the bed he's going to wake up on.
So for me, Rob, can you check one thing? Because this is a big thing. Has AOC ever met with Trump? Has AOC and Trump ever met in person?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I'm not sure, but I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But maybe I'm wrong. So let's see here. Let's see if they've ever met in person. So there's no credible records of ever in person documented. Here's what we know: that they have engaged in substantial conflict, public, including back and forth. Oh, thank you so much. Tweets and commentary. AOC referenced a meeting between Trump and Ted Cruz, but not herself. News. Okay. So this is very big, because if you would have asked me who's going to meet with Trump first, AOC or Mamdani is meeting with Trump first. Okay, Hochul has obviously met with Trump many times as the governor of New York. And it makes me also go to the next step with Mamdani. I think his last phone calls are going to be AOC is going to be one of them. I think if he's asking about what do you think, one of them is going to be AOC. But when you're saying long-term with Mamdani, what is his long-term? he can't run for president. If you think about mayors of New York City typically run for president. De Blasio ran for president. Bloomberg ran for president. Giuliani ran for president. I don't think Adams is going to run for president, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point if he just goes in there and says, I'm going to run for president, gets his 1 point, Wikipedia says presidential candidate, and he's off to the races, right? We don't know that. So I don't know what his role is going to be long term. I just don't see him being that willing to work with the president because it changes the brand that he has. If I have to put a split, it'd be a 70-30 split of him coming in to try to do more showmanship than anything else and then go back and say, I met with the president and I told him to his face. I see something like that he tries to do. And if he does, we'll see what happens. Let's talk about New York State. So you go up against Governor Hochul. I think she wins by 5.7%. I don't know what the number is, 5.7, 5.8. She spent $60 million. She got 3 million votes. That's $20 a vote, if I'm not mistaken, give or take the numbers. And then every day when we were watching, we're like, whoa, Lee is coming up. And then every time you're like, oh, this is getting closer. This is getting closer until the day. People were sitting there saying there could be a massive surprise today of you beating her. And it would have been a historic victory for that to have taken place. So respect you for your fight because you kept fighting and you came out of nowhere. But now today, a lot of people would say, well, you know, if that was the case, it should be a lot closer. And the name we keep hearing about is Stefanik. She's a fighter. She's tough. You know, she probably went viral. One of the first times was she went and called out the president of one of the universities. I don't know if it was Columbia or Harvard, but it was one of them that she went strongly like, I like this girl's fight. And she's young, she's attractive, she's well-spoken. But the polls are saying Stefanik is behind by 20 points. And this is Siena, which Siena is a 50-50 poll. It's not like it's some of the polls that you trust a little bit more. But still, what is the likelihood that New York State could flip and be a Republican?
So two things. One is being in my current position because of the Hatch Act, there's certain very candid thoughts that I'm not able to share. There's one other point is that I can't ever and I won't ever get ahead of the president while in this position. You know, if the president hasn't endorsed in a race or he hasn't said or have gotten particular guidance, I'm following his lead on all political races everywhere. With all that being said, even though I'd said earlier that the state was 22% Republican, you just pointed out we got just under 50% of the vote. That doesn't happen unless there are a whole lot of people who are not Republican who have decided enough is enough. They've hit their breaking point and they want to save the state. I mean, that was something that I was talking about a lot then, and that's a lot that you're hearing now. And basically you have over 60 counties in this state. What we did was we had a vocal in every single county, broken down by party. And we knew that we couldn't get any less than 30% in New York City. If we get less than 30%, we have no shot of winning. If we get more than 35% of the vote in New York City, depending on how far above 35%, the math starts flipping the other way. It starts to become really difficult or impossible to lose. We ended up spending a very disproportionate amount of our time for the general election inside of New York City to get to the 30%. And I think that it would have been a lot better if we were able to get to 35 and I could have spent a lot more time throughout the rest of the state. What we found in 2022 was that upstate, the number one issue was the economy. The number two issue was crime and public safety. Downstate, the number one issue was crime and public safety. The number two issue was the economy. And across the entire state, messaging, cashless bail. And every time there was there was some kind of crazy criminal incident, which was like every day inside of New York City, you can count on the next morning I was going to be there at that particular location talking about how our policies would have prevented it. If we implemented, this is how things would get better. And then we weighed in on other issues as well. The money is also important to raise name recognition. Like if you see some polls come out now, like Hochul is the governor. She's been the governor now for 4 years. More people know who she is. By the way, I feel like more people who know her, the more they dislike her. So the disapproval number has risen as well. So it cuts both ways. Mm-hmm. More name ID, but also more disapproval. Over the course of a campaign, it starts with structure. At the beginning, you put together the right team, you set the right vocals, you raise the funds that you need, you figure out what your messaging is going to be. I remember the start of my campaign in April of 2021. I would get asked on my announcement day, I did a lot of media interviews. They say, what's the top 3 issues? And I was talking about these top 3 issues at that moment based off of what the voters were saying are their top 3 issues. If you asked me at the end of the campaign, what are the top 3 issues of the campaign? I would have said, and I did say, whatever the top 3 issues are of the people. And what happens too often, and Hochul was doing this during the campaign in 22, she was saying that the top 3 issues were whatever she wanted the top 3 issues to be based on her polling. So while she was talking about abortion and Trump, I'm talking about crime and the economy. And I'm talking about what is the number 1 issue for 75% of the voters, and for many of them, the number 1 and number 2 issue. And not only are we winning on those issues, she's ceding them to me. She's not even talking about them. So we get to a debate in October, late October, and we're having this back and forth over crime. And you probably remember this. She's like, I don't understand why this is so important to you. And like, the audience heard that. I didn't even have to respond. I'm like, wow, okay, that speaks for itself. And then they moved on to another topic, and she got hit for it. So message is important, and substance, and having policy and ideas, and your style on the trail, and hard work. There's a saying in New York, by the way, to Schumer's credit, there's something called the full Schumer. You go to every county in New York State in 1 year. And it's something that he's prided himself for a very long time. Well, in the first 6 months of the campaign, I went to every county twice. So, I'll tell Schumer, give him a hard time, rib him. I'll tell him that's called the full Zeldin, which is twice as much in half the time. And that pays off. So you also have to work real hard. So I think that there's a lot in answering the question as far as like, where is this going to go looking forward? Mm-hmm. I think it's very informative also to analyze what happened in 22, the lay of the land, how voters reacted, what the issues were. I think there are a lot of lessons learned there.
Yeah. Is this the clip wrap where it says, I don't know why locking up criminals is so important to you? Is this it?
Yep.
I'd love to see it. Go for it.
Declare a crime emergency and suspend cashless bail and these other pro-criminal laws because there is a crime emergency. My opponent thinks that right now there's a polio emergency going on, but there's not a crime emergency. Different priorities that I'm hearing from people right now, they're not being represented. From this governor, who still, to this moment, we're halfway through the debate, she still hasn't talked about locking up anyone committing any crimes.
Okay.
Anyone who commits a crime under our laws, especially with the change they made to bail, has consequences. I don't know why that's so important to you. All I know is that we could do more.
Well, when I say that we
could do more,
excuse
me, I'm speaking.
Sure, go ahead.
We could do so much more. If there was a nationwide ban, but certainly a state ban on teenagers being able to get guns, assault weapons. I mean, that's what happened in Buffalo. A teenager walked into a shop and was able to buy an assault weapon, the kind you use on military battlefields. It happened just yesterday in St. Louis. When are we going to start talking about the crimes that are the most frightening? And that's murders and shootings, which across this country are down about 2%. New York State, because we worked so hard on this since I became governor, they're down 14%, down 18% on Long Island.
I don't know why it's just so hard to articulate what needs to get done. When you have a district attorney refusing to enforce...
That's pretty wild to say. I don't know why locking up criminals is so important to you. So it's interesting to me because you said issues, right? So whatever is the issues of the people instead of whatever is the issue of the individual, which is her. To me, she is slightly a better candidate than Kamala Harris because she can actually deliver her message. Unlike Kamala, Kamala doesn't know how to deliver the message, but she's not a very likable candidate. It's not like people like her. You were very liked when you were coming up, and that was the way on the national stage because governor of New York is a national thing. It's not like it's governor of Arkansas or governor of Oklahoma. And nothing wrong with these states, but there are certain states that when you compete, everybody's paying attention. And I get the fact that you can't give commentary on Stefanik and get ahead of it with the president. I fully agree. But this takes me to the next issue. What we're learning right now with what happened with the election a month ago, 6 weeks ago, whatever the timeline was, now just a couple weeks ago, is the concept of affordability. And that's becoming something that across the board, everybody's talking about. You know, last month, data came out showing, we just talked about it yesterday with Tom Ellsworth, the rejection of new loans, refinance. It's the highest it's ever been since they started tracking this number. Rob, I think they send you an image of it. Brandon did. You can just show it because you have it in your file. It's the highest it's ever been, okay? The amount of loans that are being rejected right there. I don't know if you've seen this. So zoom in a little bit. So application rate, rejection rate among applicants for loans, and application rate. So obviously, if you go to 2021, the blue is application rate. It starts declining because that's when we start raising interest rates. Makes sense. And in 2024, you notice the application rate goes up a little bit, the blue, because we start lowering the rates a little bit. 2024, go a little bit more right there. But look at the rejection rate. Banks are simply not giving loans out. So now we have to get creative. And if FDR came up with the 30-year, we're talking about the 50-year. Now we're talking about, there's a word they're using that people are not even used to yet. It's called mortgage. It's like a mortgage transfer where if I have a 3.5 portable mortgage, I can transfer my 3.5% mortgage to a new loan that I'm getting. Going into 2026 midterms, Kalshi has Democrats winning at 72% rate, 73% rate midterms. And that doesn't mean anything. A couple of years ago, they said it's going to be a bloodbath and Republicans were going to win. They didn't win, right? It was a complete different scenario. Right here, Kalshi, 73% Democrats are favored to win midterms. And then you have 2028, Trump won't be running. So it's not like Republicans are scored away because, yeah, Trump's going to go out there. No. And it's, well, you know, with JD, but Rubio, they're great candidates. They're no Trump to be able to fight the fight that he fights. How are Republicans going to win the argument on affordability moving forward?
Well, the update as of fall of 26 is going to be the biggest variable. We obviously we have the conversation now 10 months out from that moment. You get post Labor Day and how people feel about the economy as it impacts them in September and October. And the economy is an interesting topic where when things are going well, people aren't talking as much about the economy as their top issue. It usually pops more of their top issue when they're upset with their ability to afford what they want in order to be able to survive. But no matter what, the economy is always like a top 2 or 3 issue. So you can rely on it being up there towards the top. But like how much it plays towards November of 26 is where we're at just before. When people actually have to vote at that moment, how do they feel about their life then? Understanding the American dream, it's different for a lot of people, but you're getting into home ownership. And if you ask people, okay, like what's one thing that is most important to you about achieving the American dream? It's, well, I want my family, with my wife, my husband, our 2 kids, to be able to get the keys to move into our own, first home that's ours. Now, when you owe the bank a lot of money, you can make a debate as to whether or not it's really yours. But for a lot of people, when they get those keys, they sign those papers, like that is the biggest thing to achieve the American dream. Having a job, unemployment is one thing, underemployment is another, making enough in order to make ends meet, and then all sorts of other aspects of the cost of living. And the economy is also a very difficult issue to gaslight someone on, to convince them that their status is, that their position is something other than what it actually is. Crime is like that as well. I would say on the economic issue, it's very important too for whoever's campaigning a particular House race or Senate race that you're talking honestly, incredibly with that person, understanding what it is that they're going through. As far as trajectory goes, I mean, like I just said, there's a lot of groundbreaking that's going on. I could tell you that there are a whole lot of parts of this country where there are a lot of jobs that are coming online. I think that there's a lot of states where things are going very much in the right direction. The states where I feel like things are going in the reverse direction happen to be the bluest states in the country. I think there's a reason for that. I think where the energy policies are the smartest, what I'm experiencing in my travels, it is the red states where manufacturing is going in the right direction. Permitting reform is going well. It's in the red states. So where are these battleground Senate seats and House seats? And I think if you look at the Senate map, Every 2 years, it's not the same seats that come up, and who's up. I think that there's a different calculation than if you look over at the House. Having gone through serving in the House of Representatives during the last 2 years of President Trump's first term, and having spent a lot of my time in Schiff Smelly Skiff in the basement of the Capitol doing all this impeachment stuff, and sketchy Skiff, it is something that is so counterproductive for this country. I want to see our country heading in the right direction. I think a lot of voters, when they show up to vote in November of 26, they're going to have memories, for better or for worse. If you're a Democrat, you want to relive. You're trying to impeach, resist, oppose, obstruct everything and anything. Well, you know where to vote, where to go. For Republicans who maybe sat it out in 2018, they remember. Maybe they remember the consequences. The president was more on the ballot for Democrats in 2018 than he was for his supporters. A lot of his supporters in 2018, they kind of sat back because, you go to vote, you don't see Donald Trump as a candidate on the ballot. But for all the Democrats showing up, they feel like Donald Trump was on the ballot. In 26, I think that's another aspect for voters when they come out, is not just, you can expect that the people who don't like President Trump are going to show up to vote as if his name was on the ballot. I think for President Trump supporters, the message will be relayed to them very strongly, early and often, how important it is, with not just a hypothetical, here are the consequences, don't impeach me 1,000 times. Now it's really believable. And you add a couple of assassination attempts as well. And what they did to Charlie Kirk 2 months ago. Shit. It's one of those moments where you just can't sit on the sidelines. And I hope that people are realizing it.
No, I'm with you there. The question I got is, 28, there's not going to be a Trump. Unless if it's Erik running or Don running, which I don't know if either one of them will be running then, but maybe Erik will. But there's not going to be a Trump, Donald Trump Jr. that's going out, Donald Trump, that he's going out there driving the way that he is. And there's this notion that, you'll see the meme going around, Trump this many years, Trump this many years, then it's going to be JD, then it's going to be this, then it's going to be that, and we're going to have it for the next 25 years. Which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with being confident and playing offense and being aggressive and assertive. You should be. You should have that mindset that we're winners, we're going to keep winning, and this is the winner's mindset. But, the enemy is sitting there and asking themselves, say if there's not a July, the assassination attempt that took place at Butler. Because that speech he gave, RNC, the energy, the way it was magical. Something happened to it. Musk came in. The day. I've never seen anything like this before, right? And then Rogan came in and did the podcast at the end. And then he went on all these other podcasts and did what he did, the president. He worked his tail off to win. But say that doesn't happen. Say Biden stays in. Say, they mix it up. So to me, 2028 is a little bit weird. And the reason why I'm asking this concern is because even on MAGA, there is Republicans in D.C., then there's online Republicans. Then there is MAGA Twitter. Then there's those that are now going against it. There is a little bit of a, challenge going on with these different opinions and factions that you have politically. And some of it has to do with Israel. Israel became a very, very divisive topic. You're bot, you're AIPAC, you're this, you're that. And then let's come out, those guys are AIPAC supporters. No, it's this, so that's created a little bit of the division between them. Netanyahu's really making a decision, and they're getting bigger and bigger, louder online social. Some of it is, tempered, gone a little bit lower. But what do you foresee happening with this little civil war that's going on with the social media influencers of MAGA, which, by the way, they may say it's not mainstream, it's not a big deal. These are nobodies. They're just social media guys. I don't think that's true. I think they're getting millions on top of millions of people that are paying attention to them. And I think it's going to matter more in 28 than it did in 2024. How do you manage that relationship? Two sides that are completely on the opposing side to say, guys, why don't we find a way to come together and win this thing? How do you see that happening?
Well, I certainly think it's very important, the message towards the people who are listening and like the younger generation trying to figure things out. I mean, I remember being 18, 20, 22, having questions on different issues that were important to me. I didn't have the answers to everything. I didn't have it all figured out. And if you're trying to figure it out and you are looking up to these voices with followings, maybe you're listening to different opinions and you're trying to form your own judgment. I mean, like, we need to lean into speaking to young conservatives. There are a whole lot of that younger generation who, like, they're very interested in the government. Like, they care about the country, they care about service. They're raised with great values. They want to participate in the process. They're proud of being conservatives, but they don't have it all figured out yet. And no one should expect them to have it figured out. We need to be speaking to them. And there isn't just any one way to get to this audience. I remember not that long ago, I mean, dating us, like, I had a 13-inch TV that had a knob of 13 channels, and like with the antenna above my black and white TV, you try to maybe get reception for like 7 or 8 of them. I remember when all of a sudden there was a 24-hour news cycle. That was crazy. Like, every day the news would change. There's a 7-hour news cycle. Now we'll spend this time together, and while we're sitting here, there'll be all sorts of different news that's popping. Yeah. And with social media and with podcasts and with people who, I guess, they go to cable news, they go to radio, they go to newspapers. Like, it's so diluted though, and podcasts are rising, and social media platforms have amazing reach. It's important to be meeting this audience everywhere, meeting them where they are. There was a time, like, first got into politics. I mean, I ran for Congress in 2008. You do a poll, like, where do you get your news from? And it was a multiple choice question, and I would have to go back and look at the poll, but I'm pretty sure I didn't say podcasts. Twitter wasn't a thing back then. It's very important for us to be getting into all of those mediums and to have those conversations. This is one thing I love about Charlie Kirk. Charlie would show up at these universities, and he was a dear friend, and it's maddening that he is not with us right now. That he would go to these university campuses and encourage people to come up. If you agree with him on 19 topics out of 20, he would want you to come up on the one topic you don't agree on. This is actually the guy who spoke just before he was assassinated, was somebody who agrees with Charlie on like everything except religion, apparently. I was watching some interview, and he wanted to then approach Charlie on religion and engage. Charlie Kirk was meeting these young conservatives where they were at, on their college campuses, on podcasts, on radio, TV, on social media. We really need to do a better job of that between now and 2028, and answer these questions. Because what happens is, if you leave the vacuum, then some of these voices with the wrong answers only, and they might do it with an incredible amount of, they might be filled with charisma, they might have a sense of humor, they might be young as well, and if they're the only voice answering the question and they're making enough sense, then they're moving people towards thinking, all right, well, maybe that wrong thing is actually the right answer, and then they end up adopting it as their own. So I think that's the biggest thing between now and 2028. There are many places that you're not going to find conservative leaders and voices, people who do have the right answers on these questions these young conservatives have, but there's this disconnect, and those sound voices in the movement have not yet made it to that young 18-year-old, or maybe it's a 15-year-old right now who will be registered to vote by 28.
Yeah, I agree. I think you got to talk to them. I think you got to be aware of them, and I think you got to, if you sit there and think these guys are not going to be formidable, they're just getting bigger. I don't think they're going to get any smaller. I think the momentum is here, and I think 2028, 2032, 2036, some of them are going to be on the ballot competing against others. We're playing a very different game. Politics is a sport today. It's always been a sport, but it's a contact sport like never before. and it's getting interest of younger kids that once were never interested. Like, why would I care about this? And I was like, wait a minute, do you see the competition? I want to be able to out-debate this person. So there's a certain level of excitement with it. But, transitioning into you being the head of EPA, kid, you're the 17th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the administrator of EPA. And you have a lot of things that fall under your jurisdiction. If you don't mind, maybe share a minute. What are some things that fall under the jurisdictions of being a head of EPA?
So there are these landmark laws that have been on the books for a long time. Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, TSCA, chemicals, CERCLA, RCRA, Solid Waste Management. There's these laws that create these statutory obligations that require EPA to do a bunch of different things. President Trump wants us to advance cooperative federalism, to improve our relationships with the states, to grant what's called primacy, to approve applications, requests from states to be in charge of their land, air, and water, as opposed to unelected, faceless bureaucrats sitting in some office in Washington, D.C., deciding what is best to resolve some very local issue that the state is more than capable to do a better job of taking care of themselves. So we have all of these obligations. We are trying to partner with states as much as possible, approve state implementation plans, their requests on primacy to take over everything from coal combustion residuals if they're in that part of the country with coal, with underground different aspects of regulation related to water, where they'll request that primacy as well. So that's a key fundamental principle. Now, the core mission of EPA is protecting human health and the environment. Under President Trump, we call it powering the great American comeback, where the first pillar is what President Trump has spoken about often: clean air, land, and water for all Americans. Conservatives care about protecting our environment, but that's not the end of it. We at the Trump EPA are different than the Biden EPA because at the Trump EPA, we choose to both protect the environment and grow the economy. We choose both. What's different between conservatives and liberals? We don't view this as a binary choice. We don't say that in order to protect the environment, we have to strangulate out of existence entire sectors of our economy. So we have 4 other pillars of powering the great American comeback. Again, pillar 1, clean air, land, and water for all Americans. Number 2, unleash energy dominance, U.S. energy dominance. Pillar 3, permitting reform and cooperative federalism. 4, make America the AI capital of the world. Pillar 5, protect and bring back American auto jobs. This fulfills a lot of presidential priorities that the president campaigned on. All the stuff that we're doing at EPA to fix everything, it's not like President Trump hasn't campaigned on all of it. Now, if I had to do the math, it's possible that at least half of the president's deregulatory agenda is at our agency at EPA. We will do more deregulation in 1 year than entire federal governments in the past have done across all federal agencies combined across entire presidencies. One agency, 1 year, more deregulation than you've ever seen. One proposed act of deregulation alone, a proposed rescission of the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding and all the greenhouse gas emissions on light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles, and the off-cycle credits on the annoying things like the start-stop feature of vehicles, which...
Very annoying. It's not even good for the cars, stupid. By the way.
So dumb. If finalized, that proposal will be the largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States of America. Now, if anyone was only listening to the last 45 seconds of what I said, they're like, oh my gosh, you're talking about all this deregulation. Yeah, we never lose sight of our core mission of protecting human health and the environment. We just put out, these are the 3 best press releases that we put out this year. On the 100th day of President Trump's term in office, our top 100 environmental actions from those first 100 days. On President Trump's 200th day in office, the next top 100 environmental accomplishments from the next 100 days. And just this past week, on the 300th day of President Trump's term in office, our next top 100 environmental accomplishments. 300 environmental accomplishments, 300 days, we're never going to lose sight of it. And the last piece of this is on the operational front. The budget, the operating budget EPA is about $10 billion a year. I have canceled about $30 billion a year, $30 billion a year of savings from our effort this year. So you're very much getting what the taxpayers are paying for in 2025. Not so much before that, because when the Democrats had one party rule, they had to Inflation Reduction Act. They came up with this creative name. They're good with coming up with names, by the way.
Name.
They're very deceiving.
Yeah.
Getting back to Jasmine Crockett's point earlier about misleading, they're very good at that. Although Crockett didn't do a great job misleading on this one. She got busted. Even CNN had to call her out. They appropriated so much money that the EPA didn't even know how to spend it. In 2024, EPA obligated and spent over $60 billion. That number is like completely getting reversed this year. I've canceled the entire greenhouse gas reduction fund. That's 3 different pots of money totaling $27 billion, over $2 billion worth of environmental justice grants on top of it, $750 million in staff efficiencies, $1 million.
You said something about 15,000 employees. You're going to go get rid of a third of them by the end of the year to be at 10,000.
We had over 16,000 when we came in. At the end of 2025, we'll have 12.5. So it's about a quarter of the agency. That saves about $750 million a year.
$750, got it.
Over $20 million saved so far in real estate consolidations, and that's an annual savings. That number is going to continue to go up. $1 million in canceled media subscriptions. I shut down an EPA museum that I'm sure none of your listeners knew even existed or ever visited. It cost $4 million to build, $600,000 a year to operate. We closed down the EPA museum. Added up, all told, we're talking about $30 billion of savings. So on the operational side, we have a zero tolerance policy for any waste and abuse. On the environmental side, we are prioritizing our statutory obligations. We will do more with less. We will get more done with 12,500 employees than they did previously with over 16,000. And on top of it, we're going to do the largest deregulation that anyone has ever seen in the history of the United States of America.
I love that you're doing that. So now there's two angles I want to go with this, but let's first go with California. So California, I lived there for 20-some years, 24 years, and these fires that keep happening. We saw the Palisades, we saw the fires, all over the place, the tens of thousands of acres, people's families, stories, memories, homes that they grew up in that's been passed generation to generation, completely gone, right? You're right on the water. This is environmental. You're in a state that this guy had a $24 billion surplus. Now he's at $17 billion deficit that he has, the governor who wants to run for president in 2028. What can the EPA do? Because it doesn't seem like California is doing it. It doesn't seem like Newsom is ahead of it. What can the EPA do to help the Californians who live there, who love their state, who don't want to leave, to not have to go to sleep at night wondering what the hell is going to happen with my house if another fire happens this summer, if another idiot goes out there and drops a match or a cigarette and then boom, we're being negatively impacted by it. What role can you play as the head of EPA to help out Californians? Yeah,
there's a lot, and we've been doing it. And President Trump, when we talk, he often speaks about California and specific ways to be able to assist, from getting water to those areas that need it. Many conversations about water, many conversations about prescribed fires, forest management, planning for the future and the way that the rebuild is done. So President Trump got inaugurated, as you remember, just a few days after the wildfires. He comes in, he signs an executive order right away, and he says, EPA, you have 30 days to complete your hazardous material removal phase 1 so that the Army Corps can come in for their phase 2 debris removal. The immediate response was that is impossible. You'll be lucky to be able to complete this by the summer. There was over 13,000 properties that were destroyed. But President Trump signed an executive order declaring that you're going to use Trump's speed and you're going to get it done. We figured it out, got it done in just under 30 days. The Army Corps came in. They have since completed their phase 2 debris removal. The federal government has done everything that is needed to be done in order to allow all of these residents and businesses to be able to rebuild. The slow rolling of all of the permits that are coming, the lack of green light that so many of these property owners are waiting for from the city, the county, the state, it's bullshit. It is so frustrating to watch. I can't even imagine what it's like for the people who actually live there, because I was there the week after I was confirmed. I was in the Palisades. I was like right away. It was days later. And I was visiting houses where the contractor was already at the house. The contractor is ready to rebuild the house. This is like 3 weeks after the fires. And now we're having this conversation. It's the middle of November and people are still waiting for their permits. I mean, there's all sorts of words that, I'll keep in my head so I'm not insulting those who don't want to hear me dropping F-bombs, but I'm telling you, it really gets your blood pressure up when you think about it. And then, you hear Gavin Newsom go after President Trump saying that, like, the federal government hasn't done anything. You look at everything that the EPA did to complete the hazardous material removal and all the lithium-ion batteries and, all of that work. All the debris removal that the Army Corps did, everything that President Trump does, rallying the Army Corps, EPA, Bureau of Reclamation to make sure that water is moving from dams, that reservoirs are full, that you have water to be able to fight fires. EPA has been working on deregulation on what's called exceptional events rulemaking, on state implementation plans, on what's called PM 2.5. Like, there's technical rulemaking that we've been working on to allow these Western states to be able to lean into forest management. They shouldn't be forced to put an area into non-attainment because you're doing a prescribed fire. We should encourage the prescribed fire to prevent the larger wildfires. Something that was frustrating in Canada this summer, there were these massive wildfires, and I was happy that Canada was engaged in good communication with EPA. We'd ask questions, they'd provide updates, but strategy was just to let the whole thing burn. And they were just monitoring their critical assets. And as long as it wasn't going to touch a critical asset, just let it burn. So they let so much of their country just burn. And then I'm at the G7 2 weeks ago, Energy and Environment and Ministers conference in Canada. And by the way, Canada they're very good hosts, and we had a great conference. And there was a lot that was done there that was amazing. It's a very different approach where you let you let so much of your country burn, and then you go into this international setting and you're telling the world, we just had our second largest wildfire in the history of the country. It's like, yeah, because you didn't put it out early enough.
What can you do to overlap those permits, though? Because these guys are losing their minds. They don't want to leave the state. There's some people that are like, you don't want to take care of me? I'm going to go somewhere else. And they're done with it, right? And they'll go to Texas or they'll go to Nevada or they'll go to Arizona, but they want to leave California. But the other 95% don't want to leave. They want to stay there and make it work. What can you do? What can we do to overlap and say, hey, here's what's going on with the permit? Is there a way to say, this is a crisis that we had. Because of that, the government's stepping in and they're accelerating the number of permits. And here's what we're doing with this. I was with a Goldman Sachs event 2 days ago in Dallas, and the governor of Oklahoma was there. What's his name? Stitt?
Stitt.
Stitt, yeah. Very, very impressive guy. I think he's got one more year left as a governor of the state. He was there and he said something. They had a rule that if in the state of Oklahoma, if the permit isn't given within 30 days, you can't get paid for it. So he created, and maybe, I'm paraphrasing what he said, is so you're not given a permit, you're not going to get paid for it. So you got 30 days to get paid $600, $800, $500. If you take longer than 30 days from the day the person asks for it, boom, we're gone. You can't accept payment from it. But what can we do from the top to make the situation better for Californians that were directly impacted by fire and prevent future fires? These are two questions I want to ask. What would you say?
I mean, well, so the first part is the federal government has given a total green light. Like, there's nothing that anyone is waiting for from the federal government. The roadblock is at that local level. And I mean, first off, there's ways to go to the courts, to try to get judges involved. You have elections. If somebody is not doing a good job, you could boot them out. But the EPA does not do zoning permits for a house on a corner of the Palisades. Now, we will do our part to help make sure that every single possible roadblock that can ever be in front of you that the federal government is responsible for, can help with, is cleared, and it's been cleared. everything has been clear totally as far as everything that's required of the federal government. But I as the EPA administrator, like I don't have the power to say, okay, your mayor is not giving you your permit, but this EPA permit to rebuild your house.
The White House can't overlap. And so let's just say, does that mean locally I have so much power to abuse my constituents and my voters and my citizens and destroy their lives?
The problem is the flip side. So when Obama was in office, he got so heavily engaged in local zoning issues and getting into, all sorts of, minority requirements. And in New York, Westchester County ended up in the courts, got overturned. It is a very dangerous road to go down to allow the federal government to get involved in these zoning decisions, because when you have a President Obama and his housing and urban development, when you have a President Biden or, God forbid, a President AOC, like what it means to say that the President of the United States has the ability to engage in those zoning decisions, the courts have already weighed in and said no because of what they did in the past. Now, if there is any way, maybe like where you're not getting stronger with the zoning, you're getting looser in some type of an emergency, that's a question that I can ask. And instead of trying to shoot from the hip on something that I don't have the answer to, I can ask.
Yeah, the percentages of permits, if you see how long it's taken, the stats are...
It's insane.
It's insane when you're seeing that. Yeah, and these are not...
It's like a taking of property.
If I'm running the state or the city, I'm like, you want to get back in and stay? You're not wanting to leave yet. Dude, accelerate it. Accelerate it. Give them the permit. Let them go do what they're building. Why are you lagging it? You have a customer that wants to do business with you. They don't want to leave you. Why don't you make their life better instead of them finally saying, screw it. I'm going to take this money that I have and I'm going to go build it elsewhere. I don't understand the process of what they're doing there. Lastly, on this fire,
okay. One other point, by the way,
please,
is that on the flip side. So let's say there's a President Obama who is there's a fire that hits. The power is given to the president to be in charge of like these zoning and permitting decisions. They will then claim power to take. Okay, we have a single family home. And it's a community of single family homes, which is basically what we're dealing with in LA. And they could say, okay, with the power invested in me, like using that as an opportunity to rebuild where like you can't be rebuilding as a single family. So I think one of the important questions, taking what you and I are talking about to the next level to research whether or not a power would ever exist, it would be important that you couldn't change the zoning where you're stripping away a property right. I think it would be very important how you do it, because if the Democrats were in charge and you set the wrong precedent, and they had the power to change that zoning, they would be rebuilding local communities how they see fit in a way that would strip away private property rights.
This is catastrophic. If you're running a state and you don't want to lose your job, business owners, your job creators, they'll leave. They'll go to a different place.
Yeah, and they are.
Definitely, they are. So. Let's go to the next thing. Is there anything when you drive in LA, you'll see the downtown black clouds. You'll go over the, not even the 4 or 5 freeway. It's the not the 5, but one of the freeways you go down, 2 freeway, and you'll see the cloud. You're like, whoa! Look at the cloud in LA, black, dark, nasty, right? Okay. The preventing of future fires. What can the EPA do? Because this isn't good for the environment anyways, right? So this kind of falls under the EPA. What can we do? A sort of technology, maybe incentivizing and saying any entrepreneur that comes out with a technology, because look, we're going to talk about what's going on with Iran right now, with with cloud seeding and what they're doing. It's similar to what they did with Dubai. And we used to say, no, that's conspiracy theory. There is no such thing as cloud seeding. That's BS. Dubai did it. California did it. I mean, Iran did it. Iran's in floods. We'll get into that. Can't we create a technology that incentivizes entrepreneurs and say, if you're able to find a solution for fires, we are willing to give X, Y, Z to accelerate the process of eliminating fire? Because, anticipation is one, And then prevention is better than while you're in it, let me go get helicopters coming back and forth. What can the EPA do to prevent more of these big fires from happening?
So we've been working on it this year, working primarily with the Western governors, and I've met with them multiple times in D.C. They had a gathering in New Mexico, and meet with them individually as I've traveled to their states. The way the system was set up under the Biden EPA is that they are discouraged, they are disincentivized from engaging in controlled burns, prescribed fires. They are punished for doing it because when they do the prescribed fire, it releases particulate matter into the air, and then that community, that state, will end up in non-attainment. And if they end up in non-attainment, then the consequences include loss of federal funding and more. So they are discouraged and they are disincentivized. What we're working on doing is reversing that. We want to incentivize these states to engage in forest management, these prescribed fires, these exceptional events. So on March 12th, I announced so much deregulation in one day. It was, if you were an energy and environment reporter in Washington, D.C., you got a press release from me once every 5 minutes for 2 hours, just announcing different deregulatory actions. And multiple press releases that were included in that day's announcement included different aspects of what I'm talking about here to encourage and incentivize states to lean into prescribed burns and forest management. I don't want them to be punished at all for engaging this, because if they don't do it, the consequences are worse. You end up with a wildfire and then people lose their homes, their businesses, their lives, and the cost ends up becoming even greater. Now, another piece of this, which you got into in your question, you mentioned cloud seeding. I want to say as strongly as I possibly can that I do not agree at all with the idea that humans should be playing God with the weather. I don't feel comfortable with it at all. I don't feel like it's studied enough. And by the way, when it is studied, I don't like the idea at all of it being studied outdoors, as opposed to being studied somehow indoors. Now, I would say for the now some states have legalized cloud seeding. Some U.S. states have legalized cloud seeding. They believe in it.
Which ones are these?
Like the list might be. Maybe there's like
would it be more blue
9
or red or would it be combination of both?
It would be a mix.
Would it be interesting?
Yeah,
and what's the argument? What's the reasoning behind it? Because I think the scientists came out and said there's none of that going on in Florida. Okay, so there you go. So you got Colorado,
about 9 or 10
California.
on that list, right?
Interesting. The fact that Texas is on there, Nevada's on there, and California's on there. Huh.
Yeah, it's a mix, right? And I've heard some from like an agricultural standpoint, like if you're in a drought, if you engage in cloud seeding, you can add precipitation over, help with the harvest. So you don't lose season. You don't lose that season. I've heard it be mentioned in the respect of ski slopes and being able to produce precipitation, so you have a natural powder going onto the ski slope.
I've heard Colorado.
Yeah. I've heard it mentioned from that respect. But I'm just not the right person to be able to defend the practice. Now, as far as federal agencies go, this is primarily NOAA as the lead. I mean, some people would look at EPA, they'll look at FAA, look at some of the other agencies. There's different types of geoengineering and solar radiation modification and stratospheric aerosol injection and marine cloud brightening. And it's like there's all different kinds of ways to engage in geoengineering. I would say for the people who are out there who care about the topic, it is very, very important to communicate about it accurately. And I think that one of the things that have undermined people who have been active in this space is they'll say things that just aren't true. Like if you walked outside and you saw a line come out of the back of an aircraft, and you're like, oh my gosh, we really need to stop this stratospheric aerosol injection that I'm showing you on my X page. Like that is just, that's not stratospheric aerosol injection. Now, there is an entity that we know of that puts sulfur dioxide into the upper atmosphere, and they do it a very low quantity. It really doesn't even accomplish anything. It's more a fundraising operation to raise money. Maybe they could scale up. But you kind of wonder whether or not these are people who are like far left or like they're just punking everybody, because it's like, how do you, in the name of combating climate change, put sulfur dioxide into the upper atmosphere? The only requirement that they have is to notify NOAA that they're doing it. It's not, they don't have to ask for permission. They just tell NOAA, I'm going to put sulfur dioxide. Is one entity I'm talking about. It's called Make Sunsets. They put sulfur dioxide into the upper atmosphere, and all they have to do is notify NOAA. So something that Congress can take a look at is statutory obligations to tell an agency that they want an agency to regulate, that they're telling these entities that they want these entities to obtain permission, that these agency that an agency or agencies would have the ability to be able to regulate it more than just receive a notice. But getting back to the way that we communicate it publicly, one of the most controversial one, like step on a third rail and make people happy or sad to hear me say it. That line that's coming out of the back of an aircraft, there are a lot of people out there who think that this is the United States government engaging in population control. Like they think that the federal government is like you look up, you see all these lines and all these different agencies are just poisoning the population. That is not what you are looking at. And you have the way that these engines work. You have what is almost 100% water vapor coming off of the end of a hot engine exhaust that comes in contact with lower temperature and higher humidity. The higher the humidity, the more persistent that trail is that you see following the aircraft. Now, if we want to talk about what that is that you're looking at as far as the line in the sky, let's just be accurate about it. And one last thing I'll mention too, it's also important that you're amplifying real pictures, real videos. And there's a lot of real pictures and real videos out there. I'm not saying that everyone who's posting on it, that they're putting fake stuff out. But there's also, in this world of AI, I see on social media people rallying behind, sometimes it's an account with following, a video or a picture that is just not accurate. So communicating accurately, speaking truth, using the right terms, I think can advance this conversation and this debate much further. And no, the United States government is not engaging in population control. I've asked all the questions, by the way. I actually came in and I told, with all the meetings that I had earlier this year, I said, I have a whole lot of questions. These are questions from the American public. Everything that you tell me, I'm going to be putting on my website. There's nothing that you're going to tell me and you're going to be like, oh, well, that's just our little secret. Like there's nothing I will know as EPA administrator that I'm not going to communicate publicly on. But I had a lot of questions on behalf of people, and I will continue to ask those questions. And no, the EPA does not engage in those activities, and NOAA doesn't, and FAA doesn't, and the others don't. The U.S. government does not engage in this.
But doesn't this make you be concerned that if a candidate in the future, if an enemy, China, Iran, if they really wanted to flirt with, messing with our elections, in certain states for voting, because it's so close and it's coming down to one state, they can create things like this to happen to disrupt an election in America and cause a massive, chaotic situation here. How do you fight against the enemy creating this here for us?
Yeah, so this is a really important question. And you brought up this point earlier. There's all sorts of international activity in the geoengineering space. There's a lot of it. I mean, you referenced a bunch of countries, by the way, China as well. Here in the United States, in the past, and by the way, the not too distant past, during the Biden administration, there was U.S. government funding and support that propped up geoengineering. I'm speaking because as of November of 2025, But you could go back years and decades, and there has been U.S. government activity in this particular space in the past, and there have been congressional appropriations. Like, this isn't even a secret. You can go pull language, and I put this on my website, epa.gov/geoengineering, references to, and anyone out there in the audience can go check it out, references to past government support of this activity. Going forward into the future, maybe you end up with some kind of an administration that feels like we should be playing God with the weather. Maybe they feel like, in the name of combating global warming and climate change, what we should be doing is, pumping stratospheric aerosol injection to be changing the temperature. That maybe we should be putting clouds into the sky for the purpose of deflecting sun rays off so that they don't hit the earth. Like trying to decide what the weather impact should be, what the temperature impact should be. And I mean, you mentioned in the context of an election, you could say it, in the context of 1,000 things, impacting the economy, way of life. And if you try to ramp it up very quickly and it hasn't been properly tested and you start studying it outdoors, I have a problem just with the outdoor experiments, let alone the actual putting it into practice. And while we can have the right policy here in the United States, this is very much an international topic because there's a whole lot of money that we see getting invested in this overseas. Yeah, and not only that, I see the investment into overseas, but I see more the election interference, the gamification, the manipulation. There's so much you can do with this, right? If you think about the last 6 weeks, look at how many of these cloud companies have had issues. Not one. It's not just AWS. It's quite a few of them that have had these issues. Just, I think Uber was down 2 days ago. Was it 2 days ago, Rob? I think Uber was down. I want to say Twitter was down for a few hours. And why is this happening? Is it a new way of, who was a Cloudflare? Yes, they restore services after outage. But how many of these cloud companies have had this? It's not just them. Amazon had it. Quite a few of them had it. So then it gets me to wonder and say, let me think like the enemy. If the enemy wanted to disrupt and create the next COVID, what would that look like? Would it be more an environmental thing you do? Would it be more of a cloud? You take our service out, so now we can't log in and day-to-day activity. Would it be a banking way of doing it? You have to play preventative. It's just a wiring. I lived in Iran for a long time, so you're always tempted to sit there and be concerned about what somebody can do to destroy your life. Especially a country like ours, the greatest country in the world, they're going to want to come and target a place like this. So that's why I was asking a question of the enemy using that against us. If you show the video of what's going on in Iran right now, while they're messing with this is Iran. This is in a place called Abadan, if you want to press play. This is from cloud seeding. Okay, drought turns into flooding in Iran after cloud seeding efforts. Iranian authorities issued flood warnings for 6 western provinces on November 17th. Country has been suffering from severe drought for more than now 5 years. So this was their way of making up. So if you can create this type of flooding in Iran and say I'm an evil leader who hates this country, I mean, this is a great opportunity for me that I can use these types of events at unique times to disrupt an election, no? Yeah, and cloud seeding is an actual real thing that has been around for decades. So for a long time, they used to say it was a conspiracy theory, but it's a real thing. It is not. It's not a conspiracy theory. Cloud seeding is real. It's been legalized in a bunch of United States and for people who are out there who aren't familiar with what cloud seeding is, the idea of just thinking that this is some crazy idea, it's a crazy topic, it couldn't possibly be real. This is actually a thing that other countries are doing, and we actually have it taking place here inside the United States. Having more of a conversation. Here's one of the problems is that a lot of people who, earlier on I was talking about the people who care about these issues and the way they communicate. And my best advice is just making sure you're always communicating accurately and honestly with truth. Because if you slip up at all, it will undermine, like if 10% of your argument or 5% of your argument is not accurate, you will undermine the other 90 to 95% of your argument. Just don't do that. As far as everybody else goes, like if you think that everything that we're talking about here is just like one big conspiracy theory and nothing that we just said in the last 10 minutes is true, and you're just going to insult everybody else, that doesn't make it go away. It's going to make it worse. And I would say, like, for leaders in government, if you're in Congress and you listen to the last 10 minutes of this conversation and you're like, for whatever reason, somehow you're miraculously like hearing it for the first time, or you're actually listening for the first time, like, don't just move on with your day and then ignore this topic, because you all have constituents who care about it. And it's important to respect people who are your constituents, who have questions. And if you don't give them answers, then you're forcing them to go online, to go on social media, to try to put the pieces together themselves. You, the elected official, are in the best possible position on behalf of these constituents to find out the truth. The same thing with, like what we see Secretary Kennedy leading with the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again Commission, is that there are these MAHA moms and dads and they have questions. And instead of them being treated as outcasts and you're disrespecting these parents who want to make the right decisions and be great parents, I think it's a responsibility to follow sound science, gold standard of science, to be transparent with it, to answer these questions for the public, and have policies that meet the moment. So these are just two examples where I feel like in the past, before President Trump, for too long, you have these people who are ignored, and the people in government are like, well, there's only a few million of them. And that's not a lot, because we have this massive country of hundreds of millions of people. I sit down with President Trump and he'll talk to me about the flow of a shower, a faucet, a toilet, the flow of a gas can, the light bulb. Earlier we were talking about start-stop feature on vehicles. Each of these topics, let's say there are only a few million people who care about them. The fact is, the president respects that he has so many different Americans who care about these issues, and they might seem small. And there are a lot of people out there who care about geoengineering. And the middle finger that they've gotten from the government on their questions for years has actually made this moment worse, not better.
Good point. Next question in regards to nuclear, okay? Because what we're noticing right now is whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's crypto, whether it's AI, whether it's, you're noticing Microsoft, some of these companies are realizing we need nuclear energy that's going to be cleaner to deal with. So and then we see how many facilities China's been building, and they're playing offense in this. We've fallen behind for decades, not even like a decade, 4 decades. I think it was in the 70s, 80s when we stopped completely. Chernobyl, a couple of these happens. We're like, listen, we're pumping the brakes. We're not building these facilities anymore. And even if you, Rob, go to the images to show how we're building versus others, nuclear facilities, you'll see we haven't done any in a long time. There's a couple charts they can go to. There's a better one than this one. But how do you repackage that? Like you said earlier, Inflation Reductionary Act or whatever, the names that they give to it, right? What do you do to bring confidence to others that, guys, we kind of do need to build these nuclear generators, nuclear facilities, because we need this energy long term? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Where do you stand with that?
Yeah, we need a lot more baseload power in this country. And we need more nuclear. We need more gas pipelines. We need to make sure that coal plants all across the country aren't just getting closed down. The people who are talking about wind, which is an intermittent source, as if it is a substitute for baseload power, are just so out of touch with the reality of the moment. We need not only more energy production from within our own country, but we also need to do it at cheaper costs. And with this push for AI, there's a lot of people out there who are kind of spooked about AI and the uncertainties, and will take jobs and all the information power that will exist. I mean, I get all of it. I understand. But the idea that we just hit the brakes and allow China to win it, it's going to be a lot harder for us to catch up later if we don't just win this race for AI right now. In order to win this race for AI, you need more baseload power. And I mentioned earlier on in this discussion we were having about all the groundbreakings that we visited. I was in I mentioned I was in West Memphis, Arkansas. There was a $4 billion Google project that broke ground just a couple weeks before I had gotten there. They entered into an agreement with the state of Arkansas and Entergy, that's the energy company in the area. Arkansas relies on nuclear in a big way. And they're able to come up with this project that is a net benefit for the Entergy ratepayer of just over $1 billion. So when we do it, we can also do it smartly. It's also important to talk about water reuse. There are other aspects of running these operations that we can have maximum efficiency, so that's great for the environment. It would be good. It's best for our own economy, for our national security, and for our environment, because we tap into these energy supplies so much better than so many other countries do elsewhere around the world. The president has been advancing Nessie pipeline to get natural gas into New York. That just got its approvals from New York and New Jersey. There's a push for a pipeline called Constitution Pipeline to deliver natural gas into New England. There's talk about a liquid natural gas pipeline in Alaska along the Trans-Alaska Pipeline route. The Trans-Western pipeline, they're doing an expansion of $5.3 billion to deliver natural gas from New Mexico into Arizona. And the other thing that I want to mention too is the need to tap into our rare earths materials and to also build out the entire supply chain, because we are relying on countries like China way too much, from both the original extraction and especially with the way China's done the expansion with the Belt and Road Initiative, but then not just with the extraction out of the ground, but also the whole process of putting together that battery, that chip, until that point where you get the final product. We start to finish need to work on this here in the U.S. Magnets, batteries, chips, the list goes on. Getting that investment here is important. I mentioned Idaho Falls, Idaho. That was a nuclear facility that Oklo, O-K-L-O, just broke ground on, and they want to build a bunch of others. So these small modular reactors, SMRs, something that is becoming a reality, not as a hypothetical for a few years from now, but stuff that's actually getting built at this point today. And the efficiencies are so much better. Like the innovation, like you care about the environment. We have come along so far with stationary sources. We just mentioned a whole bunch. And as well with mobile sources, light, medium, and heavy duty vehicles. And one other thing I wanted to mention is something that's really interesting to me: advanced recycling. I was in Texas in this place called Baytown, and I think it's maybe owned by ExxonMobil. It's a lot of partnerships with a lot of different companies, and there's so much concern about recycling plastics, and you'll hear like many in the left talk about plastics in the ocean, and you get bipartisan support for some of these bills that have passed Congress in the past, like Save Our Seas, Save Our Seas Act, or Save Our Seas 2.0. Advanced recycling isn't just breaking down plastic into smaller plastic. It is like breaking it down to its original compound. It's amazing how far innovation has gone right now, and it's incredible. Wow. Like on the right on the environmental front, the opportunities that are in front of us. So like for all the Americans out there who you want to go rally behind some environmental NGO to boycott Keystone Pipeline or whatever's next. You want some litigation to stop all this innovation and investment in the country. All you're doing is empowering countries like China. You're weakening the United States, and you're out of touch really with how far these advancements have come right here in America.
I think this is good that you guys are focused on this. I think we need to win the energy, war as well, long term. It's going to cause all this. What number was it yesterday? Was it 15 trillion, 16 trillion that the president's gotten commitment of? Maybe even 18 trillion of commitment of people, of companies and countries investing here. You saw he talked to MBS, and just on a 5-minute conversation got him from $600 billion to $1 trillion. Yeah. Those folks that are going to be investing here, you need the resources to be able to make the investment, knowing I'm going to get a rate of return, and energy is going to be a big part of it. So it's great that you guys are
American jobs. They pay taxes. And by the way, like the people out there are like, oh, that's not true that trillions of dollars are coming into the United States. When President Trump was talking about this, I was at the White House for this dinner with MBS this week, and the president saying it, sitting next to MBS for a $1 trillion Saudi commitment. And then you look a few people down and you see Tim Cook from Apple, and they've pledged $500-600 billion. You look a few more seats down the table and you see Jensen from the video. They've pledged $500-600 million. And there was so many other people inside that room. I mean, you might have been at, for all I know, if you added up the amount of pledged investments from just inside of that the East Room of the White House that night, you are way above all of the left-wing fact checkers who are trying to claim that this money isn't coming in.
Now, if this continues and you guys get the results and the right person campaigns in 28, this could be, because in order to really build on this momentum, you guys need 12 years. You need more than 4 years. So a big part of the concern for me is, who's going to come afterwards? We know he's a doer. Who's going to be a doer at his level to continue to trust for voters to say, I got somebody in there that's going to continue. By the way, what's your best Trump story? Do you have a Trump story of, spending
Many.
time? I'm sure you spend many.
I'll give you a good one from recent memory. He calls me up. It's late at night. I am laying down in bed. Lights are out. I'm ready to go to sleep. Fortunately, he didn't call me a little bit later because I actually was about to be asleep. I wasn't asleep yet. Phone rings. He's talking about an issue that he's pretty fired up over. He wants me to call another cabinet member and one other person and then get back to him. So, Mr. President, it's getting kind of late at night. If I reach them right away, I'll definitely call you back. But let's say it's hard for me to reach one or both of them and it gets really late. Do you want me to just call you back in the morning? He says, no, whatever time it is, I'll be up. So I call the first person up and he answers the phone. It was a 5-minute conversation. Box is checked. I had what I needed. Hung up the phone. All good. Call the second person. Can't reach him. I'm calling over and over and over again. I'm texting. I'm using different messaging apps. I'm using different devices. I cannot reach this other person who's a member of the cabinet. Eventually, I do hear back from the person. We have a call. Got the information I need. Box is checked. We hang up. I'm looking at time. It is extremely late. It's the middle of the night. The president said whatever time it was, I'll be up. So I call him. He is wide awake. I mean, he is, you would think like for a normal person, you're like, dude, you just drank like 7 Celsius. And he's talking India, he's talking China trade, he's talking about all these other issues aside from what, on top of what we were talking about. And he's fired up over this topic that he had called me about. He was passionate about it and he was really engaged. And if you were listening to the conversation, you might say the president was emotional about it, like maybe almost in a bad way. And if you said that, you would have been wrong. Because right when maybe that thought would have crossed your mind, and you could tell he was smiling on his end of the phone, he says, don't you love this? Aren't you having fun? And I'm like, absolutely, Mr. President. I'm like, the conversation immediately became lighthearted. And even though he is passionate about what he is doing, and he gets fired up over these topics that are really important to him and this country, he is really enjoying being able to do this in like a very positive way. It's one thing to have 4 years in the White House, to have 4 more years to reflect on it, the 2 assassination attempts, you win all the battleground states, you win the popular vote, you have these 4 years and you want to make it count. After all of his experience in life, all of his experience as president, the team he puts together with the great chemistry, we work together, we there's no competition and friction and conflict. We all want to make sure that these 4 years are as successful as possible. And this president does not sleep. He does not stop working for the American public. And we're coming off of a president who would wake up at like 1:05 and they'd call a lid by 1:30. And now we have a president who he just doesn't stop. And that's just one of so many stories. But it really goes to show you the type of president we have right now who's fighting so hard for all of us.
Yeah, Karine Jean-Pierre said one time, yeah, you're not going to get a hold of Biden after 9 p.m. You remember that, Rob? Was it after 9 p.m.?
I think it was 8.
Yeah, 8 p.m. You're not going to get a hold of him. Oh, it was, you can't get a hold of him before 9 a.m. You can't get a hold of him after 8 p.m. And that's Karine Jean-Pierre. What would
she rounded up like 5 hours, by the way.
She rounded up 5 hours. What works with the president when you're negotiating with him? What does not work? When you're trying to do a deal with him from what you've witnessed, what works, what doesn't work?
Well, the president's an amazing listener. If you have a good idea, I mean, he's going to hear you out. And if it's a great idea, like, hey, if it was someone who rolled in like, hey, I have an idea of how to solve the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Like, the president's listening. By the way, if it's a terrible idea, he's going to let you know. So if you're going to pull that card, you better come up with something good. But the president, like, he wants to be surrounded with smart, intelligent, substantive feedback, people, ideas, and he wants to be decisive in making the right call to help this country succeed and thrive. As far as engaging with the president, it's good to, like earlier on, we were towards the beginning of this conversation, we're talking about Mamdani. Like, how is Mamdani going to start the conversation? Is Mamdani going to sit down inside of the Oval Office on the other side of the Resolute desk, and his initial tone, substance, body language is going to be about, hey, I want confrontation? Because President Trump will give you confrontation. He's not backing down from anyone. That he is the alpha male in every room. He's the alpha dog in every room, and that is on an international stage of world leaders, or it's with communist mayor-elects in cities here in the United States. But if you sit down at that table, despite the fact that there's all the Mamdani history anti-Trump, he rolls in there as the mayor-elect of New York City, and he has the tone, the substance, the body language, the demeanor, and he's engaging this president, saying, Mr. President, I want to work with you to be able to make New York City successful. This president, without any convincing needed, is ready in the next sentence to get substantive and deep to make it happen. So yeah, best advice, be real, make a connection. Don't try to challenge him to a fight because he'll kill you. And just know that he's a guy, like, in his heart, he wants to make it count.
Hopefully Kwame is listening to this. Middle name Kwame. Mamdani is listening to this on The Approach. Last question before we wrap up. You're Jewish, your wife's Mormon. Is that true?
True.
Okay. Have you watched Truth and Treason?
I haven't.
You're joking.
You're giving me an assignment, though, for next time.
You don't know the story?
I haven't watched it.
Okay. So you have to watch it.
I haven't been able to watch much of enough TV.
Let me just tell you.
Where am I going to find it?
I don't know where you're going to find it.
Okay.
I'm sure they'll find a way to I'm sure the guys are going to reach out to you, find a way to bring the movie to you. But it's a story about a Mormon kid in Germany, okay, during the true story, by the way. This is a 16, 17-year-old kid who is fighting for his Jewish friend because they know what they're about to do to him. And I don't even want to tell you what ends up happening to the story at the end. I just think you need to watch it. This just came out 2 weeks ago. When I looked at the profile, I said, wait a minute. He's married to you and your wife and the kids have to watch this together. The history of it is absolutely amazing. What this young boy, Mormon boy, I used to work with a lot of Mormons before, and I know about Gordon B. Hinckley, the Virtues, and all this other. We work with a lot of the stake presidents that were very, very good people. Some of the best people I've worked with in my life, they were Mormons. A lot of good people. And I think you'll enjoy this book. So if there's anything, a recommendation for you and your family, it's done by Angel Studios, which Angel Studios also did Sound of Freedom. So just so you know where the background of who is putting it up. And you're not going to know a single actor in it, and they all crushed it. All the actors in this movie did such a great job. I recommend everybody to go watch that movie.
I'm going to watch it.
I thought it was appropriate to tell you.
Love it.
This was a blast having you on. Appreciate you for coming out. And all the best to you. You guys got 3 more years to go get things in order. So everybody in America wants you guys to continue. And I know you're just getting started. You're a young guy. Your future looks very, very bright for you. And we're the same age. But in politics, you're a very young guy when it comes down to this. And you're a fighter, formidable. So excited that you're on the team doing your work.
Oh man, it's great to be on with you, and and to all of your listeners, they're out there loyally. I come across them all the time. They're all across America. They're tuning in every time, every word, every show. I could tell you behind the scenes, getting a chance to spend some time with you, that you're the real deal, and that there are a lot of people who are following you for a voice of reason, and they're getting it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Appreciate you for having on.
Sir.
Guys, take care, everybody. God bless. We're doing it tomorrow. Bye-bye, bye-bye.